go there.
You are a technocrat. I mean, you can speak to whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate for that to occur. Would you have done that as a permanent secretary?
Politicians get the information from wherever source that they can.
That's going to be the extent of your answer.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
There's a lot of noise around the data protection bill that, in my respectful view, is not warranted.
I was one of those making noise, and it's simply because I was concerned about that specific section 33.
Don't go there.
Are you going to be offering yourself up as political leader of the party?
I see you've called me have a much more than diplomatic passports. I don't mind that.
Don't go there.
What is the relationship like between you and your leader, Dr. Mitchell, your boss, Dr. Mitchell?
I'm not sure how to explain how to answer this question at this time. I prefer not to answer.
Don't go there.
They said that you approached the bank for the loan before the election and that it only materialized after the election. There are also conflicting reports around the quantity of monies that were received. What is the reality here?
People try to extort the truth and to make all kinds of things about it. I just stay quiet. So if you notice, I was really and truly quiet about the whole matter.
Well, except with not with the New Today newspaper. The New Today newspaper reported on this, so I'm not sure you were quiet on this. Go ahead, Honorable. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to answer your question, right?
Don't go there.
I think we just spoke at length about the regularization framework. So
yes, we did. But let us talk. Let us talk, Prime Minister. Let us talk about the workers who are dismissed.
The Bub Report. We go there.
Hi, everyone. The Bub Report is committed to being fearless, balanced, and independent, bringing you the stories that matter most without compromise. Now, do us a favor. Remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Hit the bell so you never miss an update. You can also watch us on GBN TV every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Catch us on WPG10 television every Sunday at 8 p.m. Your support helps us to keep journalism free from bias and influence. And together, we can make sure every voice is heard and every fact is verified. Thanks for watching.
Boat owners with vessels
A pleasant good morning to our viewers and listeners, and we welcome you to this week's edition of the Bub Report. I am your humble host, Dr. Kellen Bub. We do want to take this time to extend happy independence greetings to the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and PT Martinique in this our 52nd year of independence. But it will be remiss of me if we were not to acknowledge that this year's independence was overshadowed by an extremely dark event in the communities of Crochet, Cafe, and surrounding areas. And of course, in the communities of Northern St. David's as well, whether that's in Canal, Primrose, Crochet, Labu, all of those areas, Retreat, all of those areas were in for some extremely scary days in the last couple of days in Grenada. And it's just another example. And this morning, folks, I am really going to speak off the cuff because, everyone is talking about, systems. This particular system didn't work. And absolutely, systems need to work in order for us to ameliorate the conditions that come with criminality in our society. But let us talk also about culture. What is it about the culture of violence in our societies? What is it about the culture of misogyny and the culture of sexism and the culture of just treating women as second-class citizens in our own societies? Folks, I am just extremely angry at what unfolded. But again, what does anger do in this moment? What did anger do with respect to the Ariel Bola tragedy? that occurred before this one, and respect to the Robbie and Jeremiah tragedy. And there is a long list of Grenadian women who have fallen victim to that pervasive culture of misogyny and sexism that we see in the society. And so the question is, while we are now facing this current tragedy, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to talk about it for a few days and then the issue goes on the back burner? And then when the cycle keeps repeating itself, then we have outrage and then we do the same things over and over and over again? The cycle needs to break. The cycle needs to break. Our women in Grenadian society continue to be traumatized. Those who have been traumatized by these subhuman monsters is what they are. That's what they are. And when they are released from prison, that cycle of trauma continues because they go back into communities. Sometimes they go into communities where they are not known, where they're not from. So what happens to people who are not aware of their presence? What happens to the victims who have been traumatized by these guys, who are then released, and the victims have to sit with them on the same buses, go to the same public facilities, go out in public and you're seeing these folks there who traumatize you in the most violent of ways? And what about the families who have lost their relatives, like young Alejandra here? What about their lives and the trauma that they would have to face for the rest of their lives? Folks, today I had an editorial, but the reality is this hit close to home in many ways. And I just want to take this moment before we get into the first segment of the program for us to have a moment of silence, for Alejandra, whose life was violently taken. A young lady with so much promise, a young lady who was studying nursing. We found out that her dad paid some of her tuition. She was excitedly looking forward to her graduation in December. A young lady who was known to be very helpful, both at the St. David's RC School and at the St. David Catholic Secondary School. So let us take a moment of silence now to remember young Alejandra. May she rest in peace, and may her memory be a blessing. Here on the Bub Report, we are sending love and light to her bereaved family at this time. This must not be, and of course to all the bereaved families who have been victims of this type of pervasive and culturally entrenched violence in our societies that needs to end. Folks, this is the Bub Report. We'll be right back after this. And folks, before we get to the next segment, there is just another thought that crossed my mind. And that has to do with the maxim, of course, if you see something, say something. We really need to start encouraging this business of if you see something, say something. When it takes a village to raise a child, we know all of that. But sometimes in our families, we see things happen and we don't say anything. Okay? We see things happen with so-called people of respectability, stature in the society, and we don't say anything. I think a lot of part of what occurs with violence against women in our societies is just the fact that there is a permission structure in many respects where folks don't report these incidents because of who the perpetrator is or because of what economic benefit the perpetrator might be bringing to that family. Even in your own families, in our own families, we have these perpetrators. And we say nothing because we give them a permission structure to continue to do it. That also needs to end. Okay, folks, now let's get into this week's program. I don't want to keep my first guest waiting. He might have a lot of business to attend to today. But for the first segment of our program, a major issue is raising serious questions about governance and accountability that is unfolding in Grenada's carronage. Now, boat owners were ordered to remove their vessels by the 7th of February 2026 or faced forced removal. Now, according to the Ports Authority manager, Franklin Redhead, these owners were first given notices 3 years ago, not weeks, not months, but years, according to the Ports Authority. Now, those notices, he says, were ignored. The Ports Authority claims the vessels have contributed to the physical deterioration of the carronage and pose safety risks to pedestrians. But some fishermen are pushing back. They argue that they were never properly consulted and insist that they will not move until alternative berthing arrangements are clearly defined. Now, one fisherman who, of course, is part of the Longshoremen Association of Grenada, he points to the Fisheries Act, and he says that obligates the state to provide proper berthing and mooring facilities for longliners. The Port Authority disputes that interpretation. So again, we ask, who is responsible? Who decides? And why do these conflicts always seem to escalate only at the point of enforcement? And joining us now is Mr. Hoyt Oliver, who is the president of the Longshoremen Association. Mr. Oliver, welcome to this week's edition of the Bub Report again, sir. And happy independence. Of course, under some very sad circumstances, but happy independence. And I see you wearing your patriotic red, sir. So welcome.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Good morning to you, and thank you. Blessed Sunday morning to you and your viewers. Yeah, correction there is the Grenada Longliners Association.
Longliners Association. Thank you for that correction. Absolutely. So, Mr. Oliver, let us get into it. Of course, you saw the Port Authority pressure last week. And the first line of questioning that we have here for you, sir, is can you articulate what the Port Authority said about the conditions on the carronage with respect to safety and staying within international maritime organizations? How long have the port been having those conversations with you?
Okay. The port has always stated that they're the ones in charge of the carronage on the water side, not on the physical side of the carronage.
Okay.
You know, like the sidewalk and roads and stuff. They are in charge of the waterway.
Okay.
You know, they did send out some notices a couple of years for the removal of the boats from the prohibited berthing area on the carronage. We acknowledged the notices. 2 years ago, we had a meeting with one of the representatives of the Port Authority, and we had also present at that meeting a representative of government and fisheries. And in that meeting, we told them what the situation was with us moving. The amount of boats that are there, the fishing fleet has, what should I say, exploded over the past century. The fleet has grown in numbers by a large scale, and that helped in pushing some of the boats into the area that the Port Authority has as a non-berthing area. In that meeting, we told them that it doesn't have any other facility for fishermen, for fishing boats. And we are prepared to stay at our own risk in that position. That is how the meeting ended 2 years ago. Subsequently, they issued another report, another notice, giving us 90 days to vacate the area. And we had a meeting. I had a meeting with the port manager, speaking to him on our concerns, because some of the issues that they raise, we have exception to. We have no problem in following the directives. They're claiming that we're in a bad area, and we said no, we don't have a problem in moving from the restricted area, but we need a suitable place to be relocated to. And in that meeting 2 years ago, the government representative promised that government is looking into creating a facility at the Melville Street area where the existing fish market is, to facilitate the long line vessels. This is an industry second to tourism in foreign exchange earnings for this country. We support food security, we support national employment and foreign exchange for this country. And in our view, we are slighted and looked down upon by the authorities in that the last press conference that Port Authority had, in which they tell us that 30 days and we had enough time to move. We asked, we did a letter to the Port Authority manager again, asking for a little time. Let us have a conversation and plan this move. It's not that we don't want to move, but let us sit down as people that have a stake in Grenada and give us that respect to say, well, this is where we could move to. How are we doing it? When they're standing hard and fast with their conditions. Yet it's their right to control the waterway of the Carnage. We have no problem with that. We have no problem in moving from the berthing area, from the restricted berthing area. But let us have a conversation on the way forward from there. How we're moving. There are obstacles in our way, and we spoke to them concerning them, and it is like nothing doing.
Yeah, I understand that part, sir, but it is not Port Authority's obligation, as they would say, for them to find facilities for you. So in as much as, yes, we can say that, the Port Authority, perhaps they should have had more consultation with you. What about the conversations that you've had with government, especially fisheries, with respect to those facilities promised 3 years ago? At the initial onset of that first notice that was given to you, did the government give a specific timeline with respect to the request that you advanced or the request that you put in about when those berthing facilities, those alternate berthing arrangements would have been made? Did they give a timeline as to when that was going to happen?
No timeline was given. Port Authority really and truly does not have that obligation to provide that area for us. It is the fisheries department or fisheries government is who is responsible for providing that, because that is who we under. Right. We are aware of that. Port Authority doesn't have to physically provide that. But the alternative that they're offering, I mean, they're talking about going and anchor outside in the anchorage and all this thing. The industry, our concern is the safety of these vessels. We have a lot invested in these vessels. These vessels cost $500,000 and up, depending on the size of these vessels. We have a lot of equipment, or modern equipment that we invest in. This is our livelihood. We have all our safety equipments, all the navigation equipments, our equipment for aid to fishing, and all of these stuff. And they're asking us to put the boats on the outside and expose theft of all their equipment, vandalism, and in case of bad weather, loss of the complete of your complete investment. We have families that we see after. We have investments. The investment that we have, a lot of the guys are paying loans. A lot of the guys take big risk in getting involved in the long line in business, and it's an expensive venture. And they are seeing it as just put it outside and no care, no one saying like, if you put your boat on the outside, you have to have dinghies to access your boat. There isn't a facility to store your dinghies when you're coming. And all these things we bring up to them in the meeting that we had 2 years ago with a representative. And since after that meeting, this thing just sprung up again. And without any consultation with the fishing sector. I mean, the last press conference Port Authority had, they invited tourism, they invited the police, and made threatening statements, claiming that they can take our investment, $1 million investments, and mark it as derelict and dispose of it at our cost. I mean, this is an industry that is second to tourism in this country. And they're showing us no respect. We have no problem in abiding by the law. We are law-abiding citizens. Mm-hmm. But we are asking for some respect in dealing with the industry, and we're asking for understanding from them, knowing that we have a lot invested in these boats, and we provide a tremendous service to this country.
You referenced in conversations that I was having with you, you referenced the Port Authority Act that you articulated that at the press conference, the folks who were there, the port manager especially, he referenced parts of the act. So can you reference parts of the act that was not referenced that you have concerns with?
No, well, he referenced the act, which is Cap 247 of the Grenada Port Authorities Act, Cap 247, and in that act he stated that the Port Authority has the right to brand $1 million investment as derelict and dispose of it in whatever manner Port Authority feels, and then still charge us for that venture. You know, in a subsequent airing to the Port Authority, they're saying that we don't pay any dues for parking on the carronage, for being there. Local people that has the second highest honor of foreign exchange in this country, and you're treating us like we're nobody, foreigners.
So what happens now? I mean, to me, it's as they articulated that they're going to start enforcement on Monday. That's what they articulated here, because of course the deadline has elapsed once again. So we'll watch the space to see how that will play out. But what about the current alternate berthing arrangements? You indicated that you have safety concerns with perhaps doing it in the places that they have highlighted. But the Port Authority also highlighted some other options. What about the options that they highlighted? Do you feel as if those options are just too limited? Or is it a case that those options are just not, I suppose, up to capacity in what would be required? And outside of the fish market there on Melville Street, what other places would you suggest, or have you suggested to fisheries, for example, that can be amenable to your needs?
Okay. As I said, the areas that Port Authority mentioned, they're insisting on anchorage either in outside Pandy, which is basically a yacht anchorage, outside the fish market on Melville Street, Grand Mall. They're talking about Clarkscourt Bay. I mean, these boats are registered through fisheries. I mean, and that is one of the other thing. Fisheries register these fishing vessels on the Carenage. The Carenage is their home base, the Carenage. Port Authority says that we're not following the instructions and that thing. We asked for a extension of time just to have a conversation as to how are we going to move, where are we moving to, and they suggested the lagoon also, which is an excellent area for berthing, but the facility, there isn't any facilities there. There isn't a jetty that you can go with your dinghy to park your dinghy on, and then when you park your dinghy with an outboard engine in whatever area that they're suggesting, whose responsibility is it to secure those dinghies? Because right now, couple months ago, they had a case where people were stealing engines and whole boats. I had a friend that lost a boat at his mooring in the yacht services with 200 engines. So when you will park your dinghy with a 6 or 8 or 10 engine at the back of it, that's easy target for the people to take. So our concern is one that we need to engage in a proper way. Let us go forward. Nothing could happen even with the suggestion of Melville Street. That project, if comes on stream, can take up to 4 years to materialize. In our conversation with government, they also spoke of something that could be quicker in the lagoon, which is an excellent location. As I said before, it's a sheltered area. It is the area where whenever there is turbulence or bad weather, that's where most of the boats run into to shelter. So if a facility could be done in the lagoon, it would be an excellent location. It might not be able to facilitate the entire fleet. So it's something that we have to look at and speak about and come up with a plan together. We play a major part in the country's economy. We're asking for respect in that area.
I understand, but I'm still at a loss to understand, with all of the meetings that you had with fisheries, for example. You said you've had several meetings with them. I'm not sure, was the Planning and Development Authority there as well? Because I know that Planning and Development Authority, you referenced that while the port has a jurisdiction over the water space, the maritime space, they don't have jurisdiction over the Carenage, what happens on the Carenage. So I would imagine that the Planning and Development Authority ought to have some involvement, especially around enforcement notices. So in the meetings that you've had with fisheries, was planning there at all? Planning and Development Authority?
No, planning wasn't there. And as I said before, part of the claim of the Port Authority is that the tourists, so we might be causing damage to tourists because some boats had ropes across the Carenage. I told them before, that is an easy fix. There is an easy fix to getting ropes off the Carenage, and the other concerns they talk about, the sewage and all these things that they are talking about. There's some manholes on the Carenage that spew sewage water into the Carenage on a daily basis sometimes. Much more than any of these boats could put out. They're talking about people staying on the boats, and they care about the saving lives and the property, which is the boats. You know, when the Port Authority is fully aware that the Carenage as it exists today is basically a shell. And I've not heard of Port Authority speaking of refurbishment of the Carenage. I partaked in an exercise years ago when the Zublin at the time was promising to do an additional investment in Grenada, in doing an additional cruise ship jetty, also re-sheeting the Carenage and doing a road from the carnage around the hospital hill into town. I did the piling survey on that venture. We did the survey from in front of Port Authority building to go right around the carnage out to the cruise ship terminal. And that is the only way that the carnage could be saved. The carnage right now is undermining certain areas where they had boats that got permission from Port Authority to berth before, damage the carnage. You know, and right now, the licensing office, where the building where the licensing office and stuff is abandoned. The reason being unsafe structure. The water is undermining all the carnage, and that is something that they should be concentrating on, not us tying up on the carnage. I mean, yes, they talk about the berthing area and the restricted berthing area, and we understand that. We're not saying that we don't want to move. We are willing to move, you know, but let us sit down and discuss this move. There is space in the carnage if certain things happen that can facilitate some of these boats that are in the prohibited berthing area. We have Venezuelan boats parked inside there taking up space. I spoke to the Port Authority about it, and I wouldn't say what the response was on this program. But Port Authority needs to sit with us, have a civil conversation as to what is the next move. We have no problem in moving from the berthing area. We understand it's a restricted berthing area. We understand that we are at risk. We told them that we know we are at risk, but we are willing to take that risk to wait for proper berthing areas for the fishing vessels. And that is what we need. When the bus people had problems with the bus, the government created the bus terminus. The vendors on the side of the street, they refurbished the market. I mean, and this industry, second to tourism in the country, and we are promised, yes, they're looking at doing some facilities, and we understand that. It doesn't happen overnight. But please, sit with us. We are humans. We have families. We have big investments, $1 million investments in these boats. We can't take them and just put them nilly-willy, anchored out in the ocean, facing the elements, facing vandalism. We're asking for a conversation. That is all we're asking for. We have no problem in vacating the prohibited berthing area. Let us sit down and decide how is it going to accomplish. That is all we're asking.
A viewer, I saw a message somewhere on a thread. There was a message thread here. Someone is talking about Halifax Bay and cleaning up Halifax Bay and using that as an alternative for you all. They also indicated that there are derelict vessels up there as well that needs to be removed. In fact, they called out the Port Authority for not removing those vessels there. What about Halifax Bay?
No, well, as I said,
yeah,
as I said, the project at Melville Street, if materialized, is going to be the best solution for the vessels. Halifax Bay is a far away from town. You know, all our activities happened in St. George's. Our exports are from Grand Mall, some of them on the Carnage sometimes. You know, there is an existing fishing complex in Melville Street. The proposed project that the government representative claimed could come on stream 2 years ago is something that could be materialized and would be adequate, because you would keep all your fishing related business in one area. That could materialize, and that would be fantastic. As again, a short-term remedy, as was stated in a meeting, the area in the lagoon, which is a very nice area to have something for fishing boats. You know, in the beginning, the fishing boats used to occupy the yacht services. That facility was sold out. It is now a beautiful yachting venue, and they built a small jetty for people, the fishing boats that were there from before, that cannot accommodate any amount of boats. And the majority of boats on that little jetty now does not even concern fishing. But from where that the existing jetty is, that the last time built to FedEx building is something that has been in the pipeline since 1997. Fisheries has plans that were looked at to do a jetty in that area for fishing. So there are areas, but as I said, we need a proper conversation. We need to go step by step as to the way forward.
So following Monday, what happens now? And then we'll get to some viewer comments here. What happens? You said you're calling. What have you done to initiate such conversations? Not necessarily with the Port Authority here, because the Port Authority they have said what they've had to say. They've said that they've had meetings with you all, but it appears that you've also had meetings with the fisheries department in the ministry. So it begs the question. Again, and my mindset, it's all about implementation. What needs to be done at this stage in a phased manner, step-by-step manner, that will get you first and foremost to that temporary place, and then whatever permanent. Did the government indicate whether or not there was funding for expansion of birthing facilities on Melville Street? Or was that just a thought that they had? I'm just trying to understand what was the thinking or the thought process from government with respect to Melville Street, which of course would be the closest, according to what you just articulated, perhaps the closest area for you.
Yes, well, in a meeting 2 years ago, that is what the government representative stated, that government is prepared to do that facility for the fishing folks. And he said that they would consult with the engineers as soon as that meeting was ended to get started on doing the drawings and doing the surveys and stuff to check on the environmental impact and everything. I mean, and after that, we had meetings with government, and the proposed site for something quicker would have been in the lagoon. You know, Port Authority, the only time Port Authority had a conversation with us is 2 years ago in that meeting with Port Authority, the government official, and fisheries. Port Authority has never engaged us any other time. I don't know who it is that they spoke to, but I know in previous administration, they had a plan to do anchorage somewhere outside Grand Mall, and that was put on hold. You know, so as I said, the immediate thing that we're looking at is on Monday. They're coming out, as I said, to enforce. And as I said, we have no problem moving from the prohibited berthing area. Some of the boats already started to move, but there are boats there that other areas cannot facilitate presently. So let us draw a plan as to how these boats are going to be moved. There are things that could be done in the inner part of the carnage. As I said, Venezuelan boats taking up space in there, they could go on the anchorage. There are bigger boats that taking up space. All of these things could happen, but let us have that conversation. We're not insignificant. And that is our point. We know government promised the facility. That wouldn't happen next week. It cannot happen next week. We understand that. Our thing is the prohibited berthing area, which Port is claiming that they want cleared by Monday, is impractical. We have no problem in moving, but it cannot happen by Monday. You know, I think one of the boats not even operational. So all these things, sit down and let us say, well, look, we understand that wouldn't happen. What other arrangement could be made in the inner part of the carnage to accommodate some of these vessels? And come up with a plan as how we're going forward. That's all we're asking for. We don't want conflict. We don't want confrontation with Port Authority and the way that they're talking down to the second most important industry in the country. Like they have no respect. So that is what we're saying. Give us some respect. The Grenada Longline Association is waiting for a response because, as I said, on Thursday, we sent I hand delivered a letter to the port manager asking just to have a conversation as to the way forward. We don't have a problem in vacating the prohibited berthing area. If that is what have to happen, it cannot happen by Monday. It is impractical.
Have you ever thought about seeking legal remedies, perhaps an injunction against the port? Is that something you thought about while this issue is sort of worked out, thought through?
No, it has never crossed our mind to go legal. You know, we're asking for conversation. I mean, sit down and talk to us. Let us come up with a plan. Let us say, well, look, if this happens, then this could move here or this could move here. Let us clear this area. Let us do something, and it could happen. It's not impossible, but don't come and want to be draconian and say that you're going to take our investments, $1 million investments, and discard of it, and then we have to pay you for doing that. I mean, we have, as I said, we're people with families, we have loans, we have all people in this industry in a big way. This industry has mushroomed from the days of the lagoon. We were displaced, and it has mushroomed since then to what it is now. It is one of the biggest in the Eastern Caribbean.
We have another comment here. Someone is saying the general public is tired of waiting. If one is injured on the sidewalk because of ropes, do we sue the boat owners?
Well, I can tell you now that the majority of ropes that was evident months ago is not anymore. We're talking about one rope, I think, that is presently over the sidewalk, is down by the library area. That's in the press conference, what they showed. The carnage, if you're looking at the carnage holistically, one rope compared to two pieces of wood that is blocking the entire sidewalk, moving constantly from other people that is using the sidewalk. On the other side of the carnage, a big iron structure that blocks the entire carnage, destroying the carnage right in front of Port Authority. If we're talking about obstruction on the carnage, let's talk about the whole carnage. One rope by the library, and the area that they're talking about, when cars are parked there, people cannot pass over that rope because the cars are blocking that part of the sidewalk. So let us be honest in what we're doing. You cannot say that one rope at the carnage and two empty drums is something that is obstructing pedestrian traffic on the carnage. We are concerned for pedestrians. You know, we are very much concerned. We tried several times to put chains through the holes that was made to drain the carnage. That is where we tie the boats on. And in the conversation 2 years ago with fisheries and the government officials and port, I mentioned to them, I said, some of these holes were blocked over the years by people resurfacing the carnage, by an addition to the carnage, the sidewalk, some of it blocked some of these holes. And if those holes are cleared, we can put the chains through to secure the boats on the outside of the sidewalk that would not affect anybody crossing the sidewalk. The chief fisheries officer at the time told me that we can't go ahead and do that on our own. We need permission from the Ministry of Works. I said, please, get us that permission. We're willing to take charge and do the work ourselves. 3 months later, I came to the fisheries officer and I asked him, I said, what is the situation with the permission to clear the holes that is there for purpose of draining the carnage? He told me that where the people don't like you all in the carnage, they don't want you all to move. I mean, and in the press conference with Port Authority, the tourism representative claiming that these fishing boats are, one, obstructing the sidewalk, which as I said before, one rope up by the library, and it's it's not a picturesque view for people on the carnage that come to visit and everything. And the day after, driving around the carnage, my thing was heightened. My senses were heightened containing to that. And I was looking from by the old fish market, or where it is by the Phoenix fish market, the Phoenix shop where it was. And all I can see is tourists standing, taking pictures of the boat on the carnage. So I asked one of the officials, I said, well, if there isn't anything on the carnage is clean, no boats, empty. What are the people going to be taking pictures of? The water? So they're talking about, we are so unsightly. Some of the people, I've heard people talking about that. We're so unsightly, we're dirtying up the carnage. The majority of filth on the carnage comes from on the shore. Whenever the drains are cleared with rain, all these plastic bottles and all these stuff flush onto the carnage. And because of the boats being there, they're stuck inside the carnage. And as Mr. Redhead rightly said, there isn't a very much of a current in the carnage, so they stay there for a long time.
Yeah,
that is not garbage that the boat owner threw out.
Well, and this is what I would add to that is there is a culture of nastiness in Grenada. People I've seen people litter on the carnage. They eat
That's
whatever
right.
they eat. They Concourse Bob, they bob and biscuit bag, and they throw it in the water. And there is a
That's
garbage
correct.
can right there. I went up to Welcome Stone, of course, before Liverpool was decimated. It's now a graveyard of environmental pristineness, really.
Yep.
And you went up on Welcome Stone, and the amount of garbage I thought, that was Perseverance's first cousin up there. Grenadians nasty. Sorry, I just have to put that out there. But yes, go ahead, sir.
Yeah. That's, as I said, that is one of the things they're talking about. All these things that they're talking about, the pollution, the garbage, all these things. That is not That is not from the fishing vessels. Again, the one rope that is there up by the library can be fixed. As I said, we need to clear the hole and put a chain through. That's all. But all this area is where they're talking about prohibited berthing. We would like to move, but let us sit down and come up with a plan as to how that move is going to take place. We have no problem in moving. We told them that. I told Mr. Evans that when he came around on Friday. I said we have no problem in moving, but let us have a conversation. I dropped a letter to the port manager. No response. So let us have a conversation. This thing can happen like that. As I said, some of the boats already started to move. We are willing to move. Let us come up with a plan to facilitate all the boats that are in the prohibited berthing area to find alternative areas to berth. Port Authority is saying that it is not the concern where we go. If you buy a car, the government is not responsible for where you park it. But this is not a car. This is $1 million investment that we can't just put outside to face the elements and to face vandalism.
Yeah. So, Mr. Oliver, one last matter here before we let you go. Of course, the fishing ban has been implemented, as you saw. We want to get a sense from you. We have the Minister of Fisheries appearing on DMs with the PM. He articulated that government is looking into alternative markets while they wait on a final decision from NOAA. And of course, knowing NOAA, you know that is a bureaucracy. And of course, that bureaucracy exists in the context of everything that's happening in the United States now. But that aside, what conversations have you been having with government about what the minister articulated on DMs with the PM around finding alternative markets? And in respect of the impact on the industry, of course, you may or may not see it right now, but what have you thought about? Because you do have investments, as you just articulated. You have your boats. A lot of you have financed your boats. You've mortgaged your boats. You still have to pay back. You have boat notes, I guess, what you might call it. But what even with government, have they articulated perhaps perhaps bailout packages in the interim, subsidized packages for you to be able to survive this very uncertain period?
Thank you for raising that. And that too has contributed to the reality on the carnage. This at this time of the year is the beginning of the peak time for fishing. Boats don't stay on the carnage. People might see the boats on the carnage all the time, but the same boat is not on the carnage when the fishing season begins. The boats are circulating on the carnage steadily. We come in for a couple of days, reprovision, fuel, offload what we catch, and prepare to move again. We don't stay on the carnage permanently. We're not permanent residents on the carnage. We're moving all the time. And with this fishing ban, which compounds everything, we're unable to earn a dollar. We're unable to pay our loans. We're unable to service whatever other commitments we have. Some of us are unable to feed our families. We have families. People seem not to realize that. But the fishing ban, in conversation with government, we had a meeting a couple of months ago with the minister in charge of fisheries. And in that meeting, well, we ask what can government do to help to alleviate the stress that we will be under when this ban takes effect. And he said at the time that we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. And as I said in the meeting with the government before, we are at that bridge presently, and we are working with government to try and find ways to help the fisher folks that are directly involved in the longline fishing, that are under ban from the US presently, to deal with the situation. But nothing concrete has been relayed to us as to how government plans to help us. They're looking at alternative markets. We have the Canadian market that somebody here is trying to get in online. We know that government has contacted the ambassador in China to look into China exports to China. And as I told the PM in a meeting, that Africa also, we had the big Africa conference here last year or something.
In August, July, August.
Yeah, and I heard the Prime Minister of Barbados talking about direct flights from Africa. I mean, all these areas is areas that could be looked at. We look at Caribbean markets, and even locally, as I mentioned to them before, I said locally, we're importing something as $37 million in chicken every year. We actually import some fish also, and well.
Did you say we import crustaceans? I was about to say, what type of fish do we import?
Yes, we do. We do have imports. We do have imports here. When the fish stock goes low here, we sometimes the people that deal with fish have to import some fish, and also the hotels are given duty-free concession to bring in whatever fish they like. The shellfish and different types of fish that we don't have here, salmon, whatever it is that they bring in, But government has not stated in any concrete way how are they going to assist us in this trying time. We're going into the second month of this ban. Nobody could do anything. The US is the only market we are dependent on for a lot of years. They're looking at somebody was talking the other day about the European market. I have a cousin
but you can't export, as far as I'm concerned. The EU has done a complete ban really on Caribbean exports in general.
Some, yes.
Some, okay.
Some of them, yes.
Okay, yeah. Mr. Oliver, these are some issues that we will be watching the space on. So we will be watching the space to see how all of that will unfold. And of course, we would love to get updates from you and the fisheries department as well. Again, fisheries is coming in the focus. Again, fisheries again, sir. The whole fishing ban issue, again, fisheries came under the spotlight again. So just putting that out there, and we have to contextualize as well that that fisheries ban was a long time coming. not, of course, through any fault of the fishermen, but just, bureaucratic negligence and bureaucratic incompetence with really.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for
Yes,
saying.
absolutely, sir. Okay. All right, Mr. Olivier, thank you so much for appearing on the Bub Report this week.
Thank you very much for having me, for giving us that spotlight. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Viewers and listeners, of course, that was Mr. Hoyt Olivier there. Of course, we've been following that issue on the issue of the birthing at the Carnage, and hearing from the fisherman there. He articulated his view with respect to the state of things, with respect to some vessels that are there that are not licensed to be there, some vessels that are not manned, essentially, some vessels that are foreign flagged. Of course, he articulated conversations that they've had in the past. But here we are again on the 8th of February, 2026, with this issue still continuing to fester. So, folks, what we want to do now is to take a quick break. If you're just joining us, this is the Bub Report. Please do us a favor by liking and sharing this week's live stream. If you are over on YouTube, do remember to hit that subscribe button, and so that you can get notifications from the Bub Report, and that the algorithm would also publish this program to others so that they have an opportunity to see it. If you're over on Facebook, do us a favor by sharing the live as well. So, folks, what we want to do is to take a quick break and come back for the second segment of the program. Please stand by for that.
Should your loved ones with dignity.
Hi, everyone. The Bub Report is committed to being fearless, balanced, and independent, bringing you the stories that matter most without compromise. Now, do us a favor. Remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Hit the bell so you never miss an update. You can also watch us on GBN TV every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Catch us on WPG10 television every Sunday at 8 p.m. Your support helps us to keep journalism free from bias and influence. And together, we can make sure every voice is heard and every fact is verified. Thanks for watching.
Twilly Joseph, or frequently St. George. Joseph, or frequently St. George, was arrested and charged on the 14th day of November 2017 for the offense of capital murder in connection with causing the death of Ariel Bola, also of the same address. At the time of the offense, he was 17 years old, and the deceased, Ariel, was 8 years old. On the 3rd of December 2019, Twilly was convicted by a jury of his peers for the said offense, and on the 9th of July 2020, he was sentenced. According to a press release issued by the DPP's office, in sentencing, the judge considered various reports, including psychiatric, psychological, social inquiries, and also submissions from both the prosecution and the defense. In the end, Joseph was sentenced to a fixed term of imprisonment of 30 years and 5 months to run from the date of sentencing. In addition, the court attached 2 ancillary orders to the convict's sentence, that being that he be further assessed and treated by a psychiatrist and a psychologist to address his sexual perversion, anger/violence issues, and substance use. In default of same, a further 2 years of imprisonment will be added to his original sentence, and that he receives training in a skill or trade of his choice. In default of same, a further 2 years of imprisonment will be added to his original sentence. Latouche explained that the combined effect of the Criminal Code and the Juvenile Justice Act was that the maximum sentence the convict could have received was a fixed term of imprisonment short of life. He further stated that it should be noted that although the offense of capital murder provides for a sentence of death by virtue of Section 230A(8) of the Criminal Code, such pronouncement could not be made against a convict as he was a juvenile at the time the offense was committed. Subsection of that provision, Section 230A, mandates that, in alternative, the juvenile shall be sentenced to a period of imprisonment for a term deemed appropriate by the court. Additionally, Section 64, Number 1 of the Juvenile Act provides that a sentence of life imprisonment shall not be imposed on a child, which legally means a person under the age of 18.
And folks, of course, this is just a grim repeat of history, really. Of course, I'm sure we all remember the Ariel Bola tragedy. We should also remember the Kathy Brangel tragedy. Now, what was meant to be a season of independence defined by pride, patriotism, and culture has instead been marred by yet another disturbing milestone. Really, not marred, but overshadowed, I should say, by a disturbing milestone in Grenada. Now, late Saturday night, February 6, 2026, the lifeless body of Alejandra Lett was discovered in Cafe St. Andrew. She had suffered severe traumatic injuries. The evidence points unmistakably to violence. Alejandra Lett was not a statistic. She was a young woman with a future, a young woman with dreams and great promise. A nursing student at the St. George's University, Alejandra was on track to graduate later this year in December. She had plans, she had purpose, and according to those who knew her, she also had promise. In a heartbreaking detail, we have learned that Alejandra's father, Andrew Hippolyte, paid a portion of her university tuition on the very day his daughter was murdered. Let that sink in. Now, one of Andrea's former teachers at the St. David Catholic Secondary School described her as shy, joyful, and deeply helpful. A young woman who dreamed of becoming an becoming a nurse. Now, today that dream is gone. Alejandra now joins a growing and deeply tragic list of Grenadian women and women visiting Grenada who have lost their lives to extreme violence. These are not isolated incidents. They are part of a pattern. And the questions are becoming harder to ignore. Because the man accused of ending Alejandra's life was not unknown to the justice system. Far from it. Now, court records reveal a very disturbing criminal history that is frankly alarming. In February 2016, the accused went on a robbery and raping spree in the town of St. George. He was indicted by the Director of Public Prosecutions for the rape and robbery of one Megan Thomas, committed on the 26th of February 2016. Just 2 days earlier, similar crimes were committed against Dawn Fletcher, another victim of gender-based violence in Grenada. He pleaded guilty, not once, but twice. The sentences followed: 3 years for wounding, 11 years and 3 months for rape, 6 additional years for robbery. Yet, the total sentence imposed amounted to 14 years and 3 months, with 1 year, 6 months, and 2 days credited for time spent on remand. Now, here is where the investigation must begin, because this individual was released 3 years before the completion of that sentence. And now, a young woman has lost her life. So we ask the questions that many Grenadians are now asking. Why was a repeat violent offender released early? What are the protocols for approving early releases? What risk assessments are done, and if any? And why was the public never notified? Residents of St. David and St. Andrew say they were left in the dark, unaware that a convicted rapist was lurking in their communities. This silence has consequences, folks. Alejandra's death is not just a tragedy. It continues to be a perennial scourge on our societies. And the data tells us this is not new. Grenada's first national survey on gender-based violence, conducted by UN Women, paints a grim picture. 1 in 4 Grenadian women has experienced physical violence. Nearly 1 in 10 has suffered sexual violence. Emotional abuse affects 3 in every 10 women. For many, the violence is severe: beatings, kicks, burns, and threats with weapons. Even pregnancy offers no protection. Over 5% of women report being beaten while pregnant. And over a lifetime, almost 1 in 4 will experience non-partner sexual violence. These are not abstract numbers. They are names. They are families. They are futures erased and traumatized. This week on the Bub Report, we not just express outrage, but we are asking the tough questions. We will examine policy failures, judicial decisions, early release mechanisms, and the silence that allows dangerous criminals to re-enter our communities unnoticed. Because, folks, outrage without accountability changes absolutely nothing. And implementation, not sympathy, is what justice demands. Folks, this week, it gives me no pleasure to have to put this panel together, but here we are. This week, I'm joined by media colleague Aruna Neptune. We also have Ruggles Ferguson, Attorney Ruggles Ferguson, if you can turn your camera on, sir, as well as Elaine Henry McQueen. We're having some issues connecting with Ms. McQueen, who is a gender specialist. But Ruggles, also welcome to this week's edition of the Bub Report. Of course, this is the season of independence, but as I said, I think our independence celebration was really overshadowed by that tragic incident that occurred just on the eve of the commemoration of independence. So, Aruna, I want to start with you, and one of the reasons why I decided to bring you on this week's edition of the program is because, and again, the context here is Ariel Bola, and I remember vividly, Aruna, when Ariel Bola passed, the same reaction that we're seeing in the society today, we saw that then. But you, instead of only talking about it, you decided to do something about it. Talk to us and reflect on Ariel Bola and what was done then by you. I remember it was a motorcade that and some other public awareness activities that you wanted to engage with. So let's talk about that.
Good morning, Dr. Bob, and good morning to all your viewers this morning. And like you said, it gives me no pleasure to be, on the program to speak about this. I wish it was another topic, but here we are. So on Friday evening, we lost yet another young lady. And before we get into the details and what brought us here, let me just say this clearly. This is not just another headline. This is not just another tragic incident. This is not something we get to talk about for a few days and then we move on from it like it didn't just rip a hole through a family, a community, and this country. A young lady is dead. And once again, we are being forced to look in the mirror as a society and ask ourselves some very uncomfortable questions about how we treat women, how we handle sexual violence, and how much we actually value women's lives in Grenada. And we keep saying this has to stop, but the truth is it hasn't stopped because we have not seriously addressed it. Sexual abuse and violence against women it's not rare in Grenada. It is not new. It is not isolated. It is underreported, it is minimized, it is normalized, it is buried under silence, shame, and fear. A couple years ago, when we heard about Ariel Bola, it was a call to action. So many was talking about it on social media. Everybody was outraged, everybody was upset. And myself, together with Janice Augustine, I think it was Connie St. John, a number of us, we got together. And then I think the Honorable Minister, Andy Williams, he was not minister as yet, but he got involved with, when we said, we have to do something. We have to not just talk about it, but do something. So we planned and we got together and decided, you know what, we need to raise awareness. We need to let people know, hey, our voices needs to be heard. We need to take to the streets and let our policymakers, etc., know this is not something we wish to happen ever again. This needs to be taken seriously. So we organized videos. We had soca artists, people who are out there. We had them do videos, denouncing crimes against women, sexual abuse, violence, etc. And we shared them on social media. We asked people to share it. We did T-shirts, and we organized a motorcade, as a form of protest and also as a form of educating Grenadians as to what is happening and what we are not willing to accept. And Dr. Bob, I think that was one of the biggest shockers of my life because, like I said, the outrage was so loud on social media. And I saw that day the entire 100 plus thousand of us was going to be on the road, was going to be in our vehicles. So we organized everything with little help here and there. Most of us, we did most of it from our own pockets, little help from Corporate Grenada. We decided we need to do this and we couldn't wait. And the morning, that Saturday morning, when we decided to host that motorcade and we saw the turnout, I mean, we're like, you know what? Whether we have 5 people, 10 people, we are going to do this. And we did. So it sometimes, you know, when I see people being getting outraged and getting upset when these things happen, I've gotten to a place where I take it with a pinch of salt because we are reactionary on social media. We have the loudest voices, but when it's time to put it in action, everybody pulls away, everybody goes silent, everybody becomes busy. But here we are at this juncture again with another young, promising lady has lost her life at the hands of, and it's not even somebody you would describe as human. It's because to be human and to take the life of somebody in that manner, it is, I mean, we were supposed to be celebrating independence. I was so excited all week, you know, independence, and I did not do anything yesterday with independence. And up to this point, I am still trying to come to terms with how did we get here again? Because as far as I'm concerned, with this particular individual, this could have been avoided because knowing the background and the history that comes with this gentleman, we're talking about 19 or 20 convictions involving rape and violence. And according to the court docs, they did not see any signs of rehabilitation. Counseling, they did not see worked. So how is it this man is out here? I'll stop for now.
Yeah. Let me bring in Miss McQueen. Welcome to the Bub Report this week. If you can just adjust, maybe because so you can get into fully into the frame. Thank you so much. Not what occurred on the 6th of February, Miss McQueen. Of course, that is just a continuation of that very systemic issue that we have in our society with violence against women. I mean, the data tells the story, and sadly, Alejandra Lett, became part of that very perennial data set that we have on this issue. You can just unmute the mic. Yes, go ahead, please.
And good morning to you. Good morning, Aruna and Ruggles and viewing audience. It is a continuation of a pattern. It's a continuation of a pattern that started, of course, I believe from time immemorial, but came to the fore decades ago. So the most recent set of outcry, yes, I agree, had to do with the incident of the child in 2017, right? But we might want to also remember cases like Robbie and Jeremiah in 2001, cases of others before, right, in our living memory of many other women and girls, cases that involve brother-in-law, cases that involve a male farmer, case that involve a school child in Hermitage, and so on. Now, how do we as a society treat with this?
Miss McQueen, if I may, I may have to have you log on another device because your audio is very low. It's coming across a bit low. If I can't hear you, I suspect the audience can't hear you too well. So I'll have my producer contact you as well. But while that is happening, I'm going to bring in Ruggles. So let's figure that out and we'll bring you back in shortly, okay? But Mr. Ferguson, welcome to this week's edition of the Bub Report, sir. It gives me no pleasure to put this panel together because, again, I think about the family. I think about the family from my neighboring home village of Apwetut and, of course, Cafe there, close-knit community, very close-knit community. Ruggles, a big part of this tragedy here really has to do with sentencing of people with such rap sheets and the sentencing guidelines. Now, is there a need for a reform of sentencing guidelines? Because here you have someone credibly convicted. The man is a rapist. The man is a monster as far as I'm concerned. And there are other types of language which I'm not going to use. We are on air. He was released, not informed by communities that such an individual was released, and was able to go on to do what he did. Let us talk about sentencing reform and sentencing guidelines first.
Yes. Well, thank you, Kellon. Good morning to you and good morning to your listeners and viewers and to members of the panel on today. Let me again commend you for being on the ball and raising issues of public interest and public concern on this program, because as I always say, public education is an important aspect of our development as an evolving society. First and foremost, let me make it clear that I cannot make any pronouncements on any particular individual. There has been an incident. I believe there is an active investigation underway, and I'm not too sure if anybody has been charged as yet. But I suspect once there's a charge, there will be due process and a trial, and you will have a result of that entire trial. What I understand you to be saying is that the suspect in this matter is somebody who has a particular rap sheet and who was convicted of offenses before. So I just want to make it clear that certainly it's important that we don't make decisive declarations until the matter is dealt with. But of course, that doesn't stop from again looking at sentencing, because we use these opportunities as to sensitize the public as to how the system operates. You made mention earlier of a matter going back to 2016, 2017, I believe, where
that is correct.
the
Yes.
particular suspect, somebody who is taken into custody, was sentenced for the offenses of rape and robbery and assault, I think wounding or causing harm. And okay, that individual is out. That sentence was for, I believe, 14 years and 3 months. And that was in 2016. So let me just make the point that sentencing in the Eastern Caribbean, there have been developments taking place in the field of sentencing, very positive developments, because in 2020, you had sentencing guidelines introduced in the Eastern Caribbean, because as you know, we operate as a single court, the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, that covers 9 jurisdictions, including Grenada, St. Vincent, St. Lucia, Dominica, Antigua, St. Kitts. And then you have the 3 British overseas territories, Montserrat, Anguilla, and the British Virgin Islands. So we have one set of sentencing guidelines, one Chief Justice, one Court of Appeal, one Judicial and Legal Services Commission that appoints judges, and we have one set of sentencing guidelines. Now, what these sentencing guidelines, very detailed, ahead of many jurisdictions, and what they aim to ensure is a uniform approach to sentencing. It's a uniform approach by all judicial officers, whether magistrates or judges, or, for example, a matter before the Court of Appeal where they have to review a particular sentence. And these sentencing guidelines look at several aspects, several components. Before that, I should say, and that inspired sentencing guidelines, what you had, based on the law and the development of the law as it related to sentencing, you had things like previous convictions, whether an accused or convicted man now had previous convictions, whether it's previous convictions for the same thing or different different offenses. What you call aggravating and mitigating circumstances. For example, in the commission of the offense, an aggravating circumstances would be, was a weapon used? A mitigating circumstance would be what an accused did immediately after the offense, whether, let's say, somebody was injured and you reached out to call the hospital or medical facilities to come and assist. So you had these, but under the sentencing guidelines, no, very detailed, and you have also for rape and sexual assault, and that was in 2020. The case you referred to, I believe, was in 2017 or 2016,
Yes, 2016,
or
yes.
thereabout.
Yes.
So sentencing comes, I must say, at a stage where either somebody has pleaded not guilty to an offense, there's a trial, and that person is found guilty. So at that stage now, the issue for the court is what sentence to impose. Or somebody may plead guilty from the outset. Guilty from the outset. Now, when you plead guilty, at the outset, you are entitled automatically by law to a discount in your sentence. And I think that was applicable in the case you referred to. The accused pleaded guilty. So you would not have wasted the court's time. And you are entitled, upon a guilty plea, to as much as 1/3 of your sentence being reduced. Now, you have a maximum sentence for an offense. You might say, for example, whoever commits rape is liable to 30 years in prison. It does not mean that everybody who is found guilty would be sentenced to 30 years. 30 years is the maximum. And you hardly have the maximum applied, save and except in very compelling circumstances. But if you, so you'd be entitled under the sentencing guidelines, they will, based on the seriousness of the offense, and so they'll find a starting point. A point, for example, that might be 15 years as the starting point of the offense. And then they would look at things like aggravating and mitigating circumstances. They look at previous conviction. They look at time spent on remand. Where there's an aggravating circumstances, it goes up. So let's say it can go up from the 15 as the starting point. Where there's a mitigating circumstances, it comes down. So at the end of the day, you get a sentence that may not be the same. Before the sentencing guidelines, you may have people throughout the Eastern Caribbean operating under the same law, given very divergent sentences. Why you might get 15 years someplace and you may get 5 years another place. What the sentencing guidelines aim to do is to introduce a uniform approach, which may not necessarily produce a uniform sentence or standard sentence.
Yes,
Now,
Sticks.
Yes.
If stick a pin there, Ruggles. Two pieces, two critical pieces here for me. One, you said that sentencing guidelines are, of course, because we are under the jurisdiction of the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, correct? Would that be, or the Eastern Caribbean courts
Eastern Caribbean
system?
Supreme Court.
Yes,
Yes.
right?
Headquartered in St. Lucia.
Headquartered in St. Lucia. Now, I do know that Parliament makes law, right? So I suspect Parliament are the ones who would, in the context of sexual assault matters, gender-based violence matters, Parliament would make law with respect to sanctions and punishment for the perpetrators. Yes, that's correct.
Right.
So you're saying that those,
sure.
you said that the current laws with respect to that type of violence that was inflicted on Alejandro Let, that those laws were recently amended. When was that?
No, right. So the sentencing guidelines
Oh, the
were
sentencing
introduced
guidelines.
Guidelines were introduced in 2020.
And
However,
is it the Parliament that does that, or is it the courts?
no, the court, right? The court. Remember, those are guidelines for dealing with a sentence. What Parliament does is determine what is the sentence. So it's not the court determining what is the, for example, the maximum sentence. So we have an example. Most of the offenses, criminal offenses, you will find those offenses identified in the criminal code, and you will have the punishment for those offenses. So somebody who commits rape is liable to imprisonment for 30 years. What Parliament did in 2012 was there were several amendments to the criminal code, and the maximum sentence for rape, for example. Then in 2012, it was 15 years. It moved from 15 years to 30 years. And you had for sexual assaults, you had generally increase in sentences there. So that's what Parliament does locally. Parliament would say, what is the sentence? Now, what the court will say now is the approach. Now in imposing the sentence. So the court is not saying, is taking into consideration the maximum sentence imposed by Parliament, and then through the sentencing guidelines will take into account the accused before it. So for example, in applying the sentencing guidelines, let's say somebody is arrested for and charged for housebreaking and stealing. Is that person's very first offense? That person might be 35 years. Somebody who has 15 previous convictions for the same offense will more likely than not get a higher sentence. The person who is there for the first time before the court, no previous convictions, may not even get a custodial sentence. So there are various variables you take into account when imposing a sentence, and part of it is whether you have previous convictions. So what are the circumstances relating to the offense, the circumstances under which the offense was committed, or the circumstances of the offender himself? The aggravating circumstances relating to the so for example, somebody who is killed, raped and killed, those are very aggravating circumstances. As opposed to somebody, because rape, for example, is for rape, the slightest penetration, even mere touching. It doesn't have to be a sexual intercourse in a deep way, just the mere touching of the sexual organ can result in a rape charge. So it might be rape, and rape is where there's no consent. So you might have rape where there is just a consent issue, no consent, mere touching, or you might have rape in circumstances where there's violence. There are weapons involved. So all of these circumstances are different. So the court has to take that into consideration in sentencing. Now, I just want to make a quick point in relation to Aruna's comments earlier and the commendable efforts made at the time. And that's the issue. So many courts are blamed. The courts are only coming in the last stage of the matter. The last stage of the matter. What we want is prevention, not for somebody having accused. The offense is already committed. The life is already lost. And what you want to focus on, because we have these reactions, yes, they are all emotional reactions, and that is to be expected. But the bigger issue is, how can we prevent these issues? And it goes back to very fundamental issues, And one of them
Ruggles,
is
correct.
respect for women. Right? So I just want to
and we will
make that
finish
point.
that train of thought. Yes, and the last follow-up question, because I do want to bring back Miss McQueen. Miss McQueen, we're gonna, in the process, if you can just turn your camera on, so we can ensure that your audio is better. Miss McQueen, can you hear us? Let's just unmute again. Let's see if it's better.
I can hear you. Can you hear me better now?
It's much better. Much apprecited.
Okay.
Thank you so much. So we'll keep you in frame. But Ruggles, a quick follow-up to something you said earlier, which again, I looked very confused when you were saying it, because I was. How does one plead guilty, and in the process of pleading guilty, you get a discounted sentence? Can you please explain the logic behind that thinking in law? That is.
Yes. Well, that happens all over the world, Kenan. That's not a Grenada feature. It's not an Eastern Caribbean.
And that's
in fact, in the
why I
United
said
States,
in law. Yeah.
Yes. In the United States, for example, most matters are plea bargaining. Once you plead guilty, the logic behind it is that you have not wasted the time of the court. You have not wasted the time of the court, and therefore, because to conduct a trial is expensive. And even the conduct of trial, there may be all kind of technical issues raised. And there's uncertainty as to what the results may be. So if you plead guilty, and that's the law, that's not an opinion, and that law is from time immemorial. Once you plead guilty, anywhere in the world, for an offense, then you are entitled, depending on how early your plea is, you enter that plea, you are entitled to up to 1/3 of a discount, 1/3 of discount on the sentence. Yeah.
Okay,
so
very well.
That's the principle of law.
Mrs. McQueen, you of course earlier, before we were having some audio issues there, we were articulating just the perennial nature of gender-based violence in Grenada, and Alejandra let's grim addition to that statistic. Again, I don't want to reference any of those victims as a statistic, because these are all lives. These are all lives. These are all futures. These are all families with stories. These are people. But these women fell victim to there is a common denominator here, Ms. McQueen, in all of this, that is deeply entrenched in Grenadian society. So can we talk about that?
Yes, certainly. I want to start off my segment, my thoughts around this in relation to our people. Our people as Grenadian people. Who are we and what do we want I ask these questions because our society seems over and over and over to expect women to be abused silently, to expect that if a woman speaks out about being abused, then something has to have been wrong with her, not the abuser, not the offender, not the murderer, in the case of even when a family member is speaking out, or other women are speaking out in the case of a woman who was killed by an offender, right? Our society needs to question ourselves. We need to question ourselves because when incidents like these happen with Alejandra, we talk about what are the lawmakers doing. And when the lawmakers are trying to do something, we are saying they should not be doing anything. We should keep the society the way it was. That we are conservative and we are whatever, so we should just leave everything as they were, right? Because some people say it's a few people who are affected. We have to think about when we are outraged as we are now, do we maintain, not necessarily maintain the rage, that's high stress. We have to de-stress and we have to plan and move forward, but do we move it to the point where we can do something about it? And sometimes when something is done about it on paper, do we implement what's on paper? So I start there, and let me break these down a little bit. One, the last major law reform processes that took place in Grenada around ending violence against women and girls was in 2012, right? And Mr. Ferguson was speaking about that the sexual offenses revisions there and the penalties moved from whatever it was to, in the case of rape, now 30 years, right, as a maximum penalty. And that there was an introduction of a principle of a crime called, what is murder one, but capital murder in Grenada. It's called capital murder, where murder, if it is accompanied by sexual violence, can be defined as capital murder within the court, right? Now, and of course, the penalties that go along with it. The question is, have they been implemented? From 2012 to now, have people been accused of and convicted of capital murder to the extent that they could have been? In the case of rape, have everyone who committed rape been charged with rape, or have some gotten charged with lesser penalties like assault, sexual assault, or something else? Because there is evidence that the reality is that some people, offenders, are being charged with lesser offenses than what the description of the incident suggests they could be charged with, right? We have situations still in Grenada where the offender, from the time accused, and of course it's their legal right to have a lawyer represent them. That's a constitutional right that cannot be denied. The victims, on the other hand, are called witnesses, and they are not informed all the time of the case. They are not necessarily having lawyers to represent them. And even if they do have a lawyer, it is not about, the lawyer is not properly recognized in court as to give evidence. So whilst, or to lead any questioning or anything of the sort, it's the state that does it. In the case of the magistrates court, the police prosecutions, few of them are lawyers. And in the case of the DPP's office, they are lawyers, and that's for the High Court, but they are stretched, right? Because not very many of them. Now, we have a situation where also that a person might be convicted, an offender might be convicted and said, you are guilty. And now let us talk about sentencing. And there are people from the church going up and say this person is a good citizen. people from some professions like social work going up and writing reports, of course mandated by the court, and it's necessary, right? Saying that these people are good people, they have family, they have work, they have whatever to do, they have jobs. These are people, and Mr. Ferguson spoke about different circumstances and aggravating circumstances and so on. Do we have a professional pool of people writing up victim statements and talking about how devastating this is on the victim, on the society at large, on the family and friends and children of the victims? In other words, my question is, do we have a actually fair justice system, right? And we have to look at that. And is that what our people want? Is this the way we want to see it? We also have a system where we still want people to remain silent about sexual violence and other sexually sexual matters. Last year,
and also there appears to be a permission structure as well,
yes,
to allow that to continue.
Of
but
course,
please proceed.
And
yes.
Some of us cherish that permission structure. So last year, among other things that the government said it was willing to do was to pass legislation that would allow younger people under the age of 16 and 17 to be able to access medical care. Our society said we don't want that. At least major segments apparently of our society said that. In that same bill, the government said that it wanted to consider for a future date. In the bill, it said for a future date whether or not to allow children younger than 16 to have access to medical care so that they can talk to a medical care provider about sexual matters. And our society was all up in arms and talking about moral breakdown. Now, in the last few years, here are the ages of people who have been killed in Grenada. One child in Carriacou, 14. A child from St. Patrick's, 16. Another child from St. George's, 16. A younger child from St. George's, 9 years old, 8 or 9. I think she was 8 going on 9. Prior to that in 2016, a 15-year-old were killed. And many of these had something not just to do with, let me just say what not with, but many of those seem to have had some link to sexual activity, or the story included something about sexual partners and who is who boyfriend and what and what and what. And yet our society, let us look at ourselves as Grenadian people. If we are honest, we are outraged now, and this young lady who lost her life is over the age I'm talking about. She was 22. But we were saying we did not want children 17 and under to get medical attention when they could go out and speak to someone if there was a problem, right? Not everybody was against it, but where were the rest? Those of us who were not against it, those of us who want to find out more about it, where were we? Those who want to protect the status quo, they were all over the place because there was no problem protecting the offenders, right? No, we also have a problem with implementation, right? In 2016 or so, a law was passed within the labor code to address sexual harassment in the workplace. That law never was put into force. We were listening to Parliament and heard parliamentarians boasting about how wonderful this sexual legislation bill was. Well, the labor code bill, and how it's so much wonderful. Part of it was sexual harassment. It never was put into force, not one dot of it. It's still not in force, right? We have other issues about the rights of children and women that we've spoken about, the sexual offenders registry. A bill was drafted, consultations were held, not apparently, they were held.
That is an issue, yes, that is an issue we will be getting to about the sexual offenders registry, and that was a very curious question that I had, but I want, yes.
But a few things were approved and still not implemented. Victims' rights policy was approved in March of 2025. I am yet to hear that it is being implemented, right? The new standard operating procedures for the health sector, the law enforcement and justice sector, and the social sector in Grenada was approved and launched. It was launched in November of 2022. I am not yet sure the extent to which it is approved. My information suggests that it is not really being implemented, at least not fully, not comprehensively, and not with any level of accountability, right? So even if it is implemented, there is no accountability and coordination around it. The government approved the establishment of a national coordinating mechanism, again, within that period, 2021, 2022, launched in November of 2022 as well, or mentioned when it was launching the standard operating procedures. And in 2025, the cabinet approved the Survivor Rights Accountability Committee. Now, when cabinet approves these things, where do they go? Now, the ministry that submits it to cabinet is normally expected to take responsibility for implementing it, except otherwise stated. What has happened? Are we checking to see what has happened? Now, a few days ago in Parliament, the Minister for Gender Affairs announced that Cabinet had approved another thing, an action plan to end gender-based violence in Grenada. Is there any hope that I should place on the announcement of something else being approved when the other things that were approved before have not been implemented? What are the structures that are in place or being put in place to implement all of those things?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, Permission Struck. I will bring you back to talk about the sex offenders registry, but I want to bring back Aruna into the mix. And Aruna, I just have to say, by the way, thank you for wearing orange today, because of course, orange is, for those who are not aware, orange is the domestic and violence against women color. It's an internationally recognized color, so thank you for doing it. I don't have anything orange that would look as good as me as it does for you, but Aruna, let us again talk about, and you picked up on that earlier, is this idea that Grenadians make noise for 2 minutes and then they go back to that default setting. I remember with the harbor master incident, Grenadians said, yeah, let the harbor master come back in the carronage. We go sink it before he reaches Point Saline. Harbor master came back to Grenada. Everybody went on harbor master and had a good time. Okay. So yes, go ahead, please.
Yes, Clay, and realize I can be right. Now, Mr. Ferguson made a point that has been playing in my head for the longest while, and it is to do, like he said, with the seriousness of the crime. And my question here is, in 2026, rape is not a serious enough crime that warrants the maximum penalty? Because let me just read a little bit of the transcript of the last case involving the same guy in 2016 at the High Court. And Mr. Pinnock at that time for the prosecution said, "It is clear that this defendant has been in and out of a prison environment and had counseling and still has not been deterred from crime. These are serious offenses with a maximum penalty of 30 years imprisonment for rape and robbery and 7 years imprisonment for the wounding." So here we are talking about the seriousness. I need to ask, and there are women in the listening, I want people to understand what it means like to be taken against your will. Imagine you are in a relationship And there are days you don't feel like having, intercourse with your partner. But you go against it, and the way you feel after, and that is with a partner. So imagine somebody that you don't know, a total stranger from nowhere, with a knife, some form of, pointing at you, and rapes you against your will, almost takes your life. In some instances, lives are lost. In the other instances where they are not lost. Are we getting to a place where we truly understand what it feels like to be raped and how a person who was raped, their lives after, it is never, ever the same. It is never, ever the same. So that is why I get angry when we talk about a minimum and, based on the seriousness of the crime. And if you plead guilty, you get quarter of your sentence, third of your sentence, whatever amount of your sentence. Rape is a serious offense. And until we get to a place where we understand that, we will be doing this over and over again. And until more women start speaking up, we will forever be in this place. I've had since I posted on Saturday, the amount of women I've had in my inbox repeating stories of
same here.
rape. Some have been reported, some have not been reported. And in particular, this young woman in this case from 2016. Imagine thinking your perpetrator is going to prison for a long time, and then you're hearing via events unfolding in the media that this person has been released. What does it say about how we feel about these crimes? That the fact that we just let loose people in the community who have been convicted of rape and other crimes, and there are no warnings sounded. There are no, let's put this out on the police bulletin, let's put this out there on social media, that there is a convicted rapist in this community. They are just released. Nobody knows. It's a case of who know, who don't know. You just see a strange man in your community. You're going about your business thinking, okay, it's just another random person. And then you hear this person's life has been taken. This gentleman in question, I've spoken about this last week. There have been reports circulating all over. That he
was prowling, yes.
He was out and terrorizing women in different communities. It is only on Thursday the police put out a wanted man notice for this gentleman. And then here we are now again. So I am saying, if we are talking about taking it seriously, we're practically a joke right now. How is it someone has been released on so many convictions? A prosecutor at that time says it is clear that the defendant has been in and out of prison, had counseling, and still has not been deterred from crime. So the question we are asking, who is responsible for this gentleman being back in the society? Based on what Mr. Ferguson said, and in terms of the sentencing guideline that you broke down, that means he did not even stay for the full sentencing. He was released. Who is responsible for this young man being let out into the communities and nobody was warned? Nobody, because we live in you see little children walking the streets every time. We call Grenada a safe, beautiful place. I see little 7-year-old, 6-year-old walking to school by themselves.
Yeah.
So how do we get serious? We are still, we're a joke. We're a joke at this point.
Yes, and then Mr. Ferguson, and that was one of the talking points that we raised in background conversation, and that has to do with not only the sentencing guidelines, but, and of course, and a viewer also asked this question here about conditions of release, or in terms of also what defines a sentence. So in other words, is a sentence 1 calendar year? Or I've always heard about prison years and whatnot. So what does that look like? And of course, you've heard the passion from Aruna here, and I want you to pick up also in the context of sentencing what Aruna just articulated as well, please.
Yes. Well, I've heard the passion, and let me say I'm accustomed to the passion. That is part and parcel of it all. And I always give the example, probably of a worst case scenario. I was accosted by somebody on the street after a very serious incident, probably more serious than this too. about lawyers and how they can do this and do that. Within 6 weeks after, I got a call from that same person. Person who holds a responsible position too, and her son was in trouble. Her son was charged, about to go off to university, and in fact called me every single day to see what could be done, about the situation. The point I'm making here, listen, it is perfect for all of us to be angry when these incidents happen, right? But the rule of law follows. It's what we all want when we have to face the system. You know, people talk about the conditions in police cells. You know, I always make the point because they feel is the man in the ghetto who goes in the police cell. It's the same cell you have to go in. And I've had to deal with this issue many times. That when you call for improvement in the cell, it's not improvement in the conditions of criminals. People who are charged with offenses. And you have to go in the same stink cell as others when you are charged. And you might be found not guilty. The point is, and I'm saying, there is a system. The system has rules. And there's nothing wrong with not everybody found guilty of every offense will get the maximum sentence. That's just the reality. Whether it's murder, whether it's rape, whether it's whether it's obscene language, whatever it is, you have a maximum sentence and you take into account the seriousness. So for example, let me give you just a common example. Somebody might be walking down the street, not interfering with nobody, has no violent record, and you know what? Somebody attacks that person. That person responds, uses excessive force, and the attacker is killed. A jury finds that person guilty of murder because self-defense is a defense, but excessive force is not. That situation, right? That situation is totally different. Where somebody breaks open your house in the night, rapes the occupant, kills the occupant. Both of them is murder, but both take place under different circumstances. And that's the point being made. Now, I cannot comment, and I certainly would not take the liberty. I would, as an officer of the court, as I say, whatever these circumstances are, there will be an investigation. I certainly cannot and would not make any pronouncements, but you use the opportunity to explain how the system operates because it helps. And I know, for example, Ms. McQueen has been there for ages. I think I've been on programs with her years ago. She has always been an advocate. And what I want to say is, listen, when you're dealing with crime, and I think we all know, you take, there's a holistic approach that we have to take. And if we do not take that holistic approach, we'll be saying the same thing we're saying here 10 years from now, because there are many different angles as far as dealing with crime is concerned. And for example, when people go and spend long times in prison, the question of prison reform and what facilities and access we have in the prison for prison reform, for that person who spends a long time to come out not being the same person or a worse person than when you went in, but a better person, a person who is no longer a threat to society. But if you need that, you need to inject resources into that. Because or else what you will have People who spend time in prison, irrespective of how long, they will come out as better equipped people to commit crime. And that is why in the institutions like prison, you need structures and systems and programs of reform so that people can come out and contribute positively to society. We have in 2023 the various stakeholders. In fact, it was an initiative of the Caribbean Court of Justice, bringing all stakeholders in Barbados, stakeholders in the Caribbean, bringing them in Barbados in 2023 to look at criminal justice reform and to look at it in a very holistic way. You had judges, commissioners of prisons, commissioners of police, people from the DPP's office, Defense Council, just about everybody. And there is what you call the Needham's Point Declaration coming out of that conference, a comprehensive document, and I think it's Aruna who mentioned, and you yourself, Kellan, about victims' rights, and that was an aspect of it. And out of that conference, and the declaration is ensuring that victims of crime are not forgotten. The Needham's Point Declaration has pushed for a charter of rights for victims, giving them a stronger voice in the justice system and ensuring that they receive the support they need, even as far as compensation, the setting up of a special compensation fund, because you may have situations where the result of the case goes a particular way. You will have that. So but you know the point, several of the countries, Guyana had a session after, I think the following year, on the implementation of the Needham's Point Declaration, because it's not recreating or creating a new wheel or system. You have it there already, and it's for the countries to implement. No, Ghana has done it, Belize has done it, and they have systems. And in fact, I urge at the opening of the criminal
assizes
law year this year that we need to push for the setting up, because under the Needham's Point Declaration, criminal justice boards to deal with the issue of crime. So you have all the stakeholders not fighting against each other, but creating a synergy to address crime in a serious way. So
I'll stick a pin.
Like,
Yes,
Ms. McQueen and so would have a role to play in the, as she said, implementation. We only hear about these things, and then after it just
no
remains
implementation. Yes, correct. But Mr. Ferguson, stick a pin here. Two issues, and I'm not sure if that came up in that declaration. One has to do with determination for sentencing. So someone gets whatever sentence. In the case of this this monster here, then he's released before the sentence is supposed to be elapsed. Gets back into the community, does that. Who makes that determination of early release? Is it the case that a client, like in his case, that he makes representation to his lawyer to said, I'm going to go to court to appeal for a lower sentence? Or is there an administrative mechanism in the prison system that determines when a person is to be released early?
Yeah, important question, Kellan. I don't know about the particular circumstances here, but if the sentence was imposed And consecutive sentences were imposed as a matter of fact.
Absolutely.
And
Yes.
consecutive sentences are not usually imposed. But based on the seriousness of everything, and if it is 14 years and it was done in 2016, then 14 years would bring you to 2030. However, internally in the prison, now under the prison, you are entitled to what you call remission. And it's remission for good behavior, remission was positive things. You will your sentence can be reduced to as your prison year can be reduced to as much as 8 months. So it's not a calendar year generally, because people would get the benefit of remission. So it's all an incentive for good behavior. So that's possible. I can't speak authoritatively on
Correct.
it.
Yes, but just as a follow up there, you
Mm.
said in the context of the prison as an institutional imperative, what institution dictates how the prison is to institute that particular clause around remission? Is it the executive branch of government, or does that fall under the judicial branch of government? Is there an independent board that makes that determination as part of the jurisdiction of the prison?
Right. Internal rules. Just as you have acts and rules, they apply the rules. So the prison has its own system. The court does not have anything to do with that. It's just under the rules, the prison rules, you are entitled. And the maximum entitlement is a reduction to 8 years.
So that there is 8 months per year, you said, on a sentence that was given.
Right. In other words, your year can be reduced because a calendar year is 12 months. So it can be reduced by remission. And again, that is not something national, that's international. It can be reduced but to 8 months. A prison year could amount to 8 months, based on the fact if you have any disciplinary issues, good behavior, and that aspect of it. And it's implemented by the prison authority, and the prison authority is guided by the prison rules.
I'm sorry to be pressing on this point about the prison authority, because I do want.
It's not my
I do want to understand, because going back in history, Mr. Ferguson, I remember in the context of the Grenada 17, when they were sentenced to hang, that did not happen because there was a prerogative of mercy committee, which up to this day I'm still mystified by. Are they also part of that prison institution? Who appoints these people? Do they meet regularly to determine the sentences or reduction in sentences of convicted felons behind bars? What does that process look like?
Right. Now, prerogative of mercy falls under the Constitution. That's a remit under the Constitution. So in other words, you have systems, right? Within the system, for example, there's what you call a visiting board in the prison. There is a board that is responsible for reviewing long-term sentences and making recommendations. So quite apart from the issue of remission that the prison rules provide for, then you have like boards, review boards that review long-term sentences and can make recommendations regarding the sentences of long-term prisoners. You would hear them, they can appear before the board. In fact, part of the problem was that the board was non-existent for years. The prerogative of mercy is different. That's found in the Constitution itself, not the prison rules. The Board of Review is found under the prison rules, the prerogative of mercy. There, again, something that is international, not just local to the Constitution. You can, in fact, you can wipe a sentence, a conviction clean. There are what you call unconditional pardons. You can wipe sentences clean. There are conditional pardons. All of these are form part and parcel of the system. But when we talk about the prisoner and calculation so the court would impose a sentence. The court imposes the sentence. But now in implementing the sentence and deciding how long you stay, if it is calculated with full remission, then it will be taken as an 8-month prison year. Or a board.
Calculated in full remission by the prison, not the court.
Not the court. Right.
Okay.
Except it's a juvenile. Right. Except a juvenile might get a long-term sentence, and before you have been a juvenile sentence at the pleasure of Her Majesty. Now that has been held to be unconstitutional, and you have to bring the person back to the court ever so often. But there are internal mechanisms in the prison that deal again with sentences, that review long-term sentences, where you have recommendations made in relation to long-term sentences.
Yeah, Ruggles, one follow-up, and then I have to get back to Ms. McQueen on this vexing question of the sex offenders registry, because that has been irking my soul for a long time. But and someone is asking, Ruggles, is there a requirement for psychiatric evaluation before release? And the reason why I think that question is so relevant now is because in the judgment that was handed down, I believe I don't think it was by Justice Glasgow here. But the point is, I think the judgment
Aziz.
Justice Aziz, yes, Justice Aziz. Thank you for that. The point is, there was a psychological component in his judgment as well. So let's talk about that, because quite frankly, Ruggles, I think, I'm not, for full disclosure, I am not a psychologist. I am not a mental health expert. But the research and the data tells us that people who commit these types of crimes, they have a particular mental health pathological issue happening there. So are those issues, or should those issues be considered by the prison system? And I'm not too sure if you're aware, if those issues are in fact taken into consideration. So for example, are people given psychological tests and psychological assessments, as the viewer is asking, to determine their suitability of release in the context of this idea of remission?
Yes. Well, that's really an important aspect of the criminal justice system, that we have serious problems, serious, I think, resource problems here, because it operates several different ways, where you have people who are charged with offenses and have serious psychological, psychiatric issues in the prison. Some, in fact, who remain in the prison because they can't be tried because of their condition. And then now you have, because you don't have the resources. In fact, there has been a problem with the psychiatric unit because they don't have the resources to house these people there. So then they are put among the general population. So, for example, protocols, and especially with particular kind of crimes, you have that psychiatric aspect to it. So, for example, I remember a matter that I dealt with many years ago. It was a state brief, and it was murder, capital. And when I went to the prison to see the guy. In the first 5 to 10 minutes, I assessed that this guy, listen, has a serious psychiatric problem, a serious problem. And at that time, that probably was about 20 years ago, they were not, it was a state brief, but they were not like paying for psychiatric assessment. And I decided, listen, it was serious enough. So I actually paid for it and got a 2-paragraph report from the psychiatrist who basically said the guy was good, right? No, I spoke to him and based on what he said, but that's not my call. I'm not trained in that area. And so the trial went ahead. He was eventually convicted. And then at that time, we brought in a psychologist, clinical psychologist from the United Kingdom, and a psychiatrist from the United Kingdom to do reports on a few of the prisoners here, including that prisoner. And both of them did extensive reports, like 30 plus pages, independent reports, and concluded, as was suspected, that the guy had a serious problem. No, it's a problem. It's a mental problem that needs to be addressed. And that is one of the weaknesses and failures of our system, because you have many of the guys suffering from mental problems. And it is important. In fact, the question you raised from the viewer is that people should be, and especially in this particular case that you mentioned, the fact is that there was supposed to be addressing that issue during the currency of the sentence. Psychological assessment, psychiatric assessment. The question is, was it done? And if it was not done, why was it not done? And what I suspect, again, resources. Resources is serious problem. So you actually have people in the prison, and that is known, people who are waiting trial for the longest while and who have mental problems, unfit to stand trial. Now that's an illness.
But
Also
unfit,
and
also
have problems. But you need the system. You need resources in the system. That's
well, this is true, but also unfit. Yes, unfit to be released in the society. And then the final question I have, Mr. Ferguson, and then I have to bring back Miss McQueen and Miss Neptune here. And that question, Mr. Ferguson, has to do with, again, and you reference victims here and victims' rights. Miss McQueen also referenced that. Notification of communities that someone with the psychology of this monster that was released from the Richmond Hill prison, are there mechanisms for notifying victims' families, or does the victims who have suffered as a result of the criminality of these monsters, do the victims get the right to know that these folks are being released from prison, or that the society gets the right to know that? That beyond the lookout?
To the best of my knowledge, no. To the best of my knowledge, there is no system. And there are those who are reformed within the system. I just want to point out that.
Well, yeah, there are those who are reformed, but
I understand, and nothing I say here, as a matter of fact, nothing I express is my opinion.
Well,
I'm just saying
I know you are articulating,
the law
and
is.
Mr. Ferguson, yes, I know you're articulating what the law is, and that's why. But again, I think our frustration is at the current system as it is. I think that is the frustration here, right? That is the frustration, as the Rastafarians will say, this Babylon system is oppressive, right? In respect of what exists. In
and then
respect
we
of
have
what
to change
exists.
it. But then how do we change it? And how do
Correct.
we
Right.
sustain it? How do we
Correct.
sustain it? Because that's the point. Ms. McQueen was saying, listen, every time something happens, there's an outcry, understandably and justifiably so. There's an outcry. But what you have to do is to use these experiences, again, not for knee-jerk reactions, because you have to look at the system in its totality and how you address it ultimately for the benefit of society. And as I say, listen, it has been shown, in fact, Grenada's prison was once used as a model for prisons throughout the region when you had Commissioner Courtney there. And for example, in school leaving, for many years, the Richmond Hill prison emerged first in the country, right? Because there are programs there for transformation of individuals. I know the reality is, and probably Miss McQueen, we always talk about the problem, right? We always talk about the problem. One of our challenges, dealing whether it's the justice system, again, are studies and statistics relating to causes and root causes, and whether we address root causes. Because the harder thing to address is the root cause. The easier thing to address is the statement, the knee-jerk reaction, and then nothing until something comes up again. The root causes of crime, the root causes in our society, for example, a study of the people charged with rape, convicted of rape, right? And there might be certain common features, and there are those who are experts at that. I'm not an expert, but who would tell you, listen, these are the common trends. I was involved, for example, in a study back in the 90s in the Richmond Hill prison. It was themed Youth and Conflict with the Law, and the Legal Aid and Counseling Clinic. Government, the Legal Aid and Counseling Clinic was the major player behind the study, right? And that study reflected certain commonalities. It was between people between the ages of 13 and 25. One, that most of the convicted prisoners that age were dropouts from school. And in fact, not even dropouts from secondary school, dropouts from primary school. Most of them did not grow up with fathers or had the support of fathers in their lives. Most came from poor families. Most were unemployed and came from large families. Some of them having to grow up like with grandmothers and so, and spread all over the place. I'm saying this simply to say, right? And those are results of studies. This takes not easy work. It takes hard work, methodical work, consistent work. When you get to the root problem, then you know how to stop it, as a matter of fact, to address it, the root. What people rely on is for the court to deal with it. That time the crime already committed. It has reached the courts. What we want to do is to prevent the crime. So there are these studies, and a lot of these, smaller islands to very short on statistics. When you want to get statistics on anything, you gotta run around all over the place. But we need that. We need, for example, to know, again, people who are arrested for certain crimes, rape and these crimes, psychiatric evaluations, psychological assessments, because there may be deeper issues that need to be addressed. And irrespective of whether they spend 5 years in prison, 10 years in prison, 15 years in prison, if the deeper psychological issue is not addressed, that calls for expert intervention, then you can have problems later on again. So
As
I'm
we've
just
seen here, yes,
raising these points for what they're good.
Absolutely, yes, Ms. McQueen. Thank you so much, Ms. McQueen. I do want to bring you back in the conversation here, and I will go ahead and share that screen again about the sex offenders registry. Now, mind you, this was
before you go into it, can I respond to a couple of things that Mr. Ferguson said?
Sure, absolutely.
All right. One is I want to start by saying that when we talk about a system, we are talking about the people, mainly the people who make up the system. A system includes rules and regulations and methods of operation and so on as well, but primarily it's the people, because it's the people who interpret the rules, the regulations, and apply them, and so on. So when we have systems, whether it's the justice system, the law enforcement system, the prison system, whatever system, that is made up of people who tend to minimize rape, to minimize domestic violence, who tend to find excuses for offenders, who tend to want to blame the victims, primarily women, of the crimes committed against them. When we have people in those positions, the systems will fail us as women because the system was not meant to protect us. The people in the system do not desire to protect us, despite what the law says, despite what the regulations say, all right? Despite what is actually happening in our society. And when I say the people within the system, take, for example, there is a case. An offender is found guilty of an offense of rape of a woman or a girl. The system requires that a social inquiry report be done on him to advise the court, and that the court can use that report in determining sentence. When the people who are preparing that report consider the lifestyle and whatever else of that individual convicted person, do they take into account that that person is not exactly a good man? Or do they make representation before the judge and say, this man is a good man, without even considering that there might have been other reports of abuse that this man has committed over his lifetime, that there might have been previous convictions, that there might have been previous reports but charges were dropped, and so on. How does the system treat with that? But then it is the system that says, come with a social inquiry report, right? When there are people from faith-based organizations going up before the judge and says, I know this man, I prayed with this man, and this man does come to church, or he had a role in the church, and so on. Or he promised to give himself to Christ. What happens? Because you see, it's a system, right? But the system relies on us, the people. And that's why at the very top, I said, we have to examine ourselves as Grenadian people because we facilitate as people systems that destroy our society, destroy the women, destroy the girls in our society. And yes, when there is a death, like just happened, we get outraged. But all of the incidents that happened between the death before that one and this one, all those incidents of sexual violence, all the incidents of rape, all the incidents of domestic violence, sexual harassment, we covered them up and we went to the court and said these people are good people. Ruggles, you spoke about remission system within the prison, the remission process within the prison system, right? I have come to learn over the years that part of the process is that legal representatives and family members are advising the convicted offenders, prisoners, to talk to the pastor or the church ministry when they come to the church and get baptized because that will ease their sentence. And they do that. It has nothing to do with religion, Christianity. It has nothing to do with accepting a spiritual way of life. All it has to do is a facade. Go and baptize and say you believe in Christ. And if you get out of jail, you're going to go to church and you're getting out. It's actually a strategy being used in that remission process. Among other things, the good behavior and all of that it includes that process. And I'm reliably informed that they're actually advised of that. Yeah. There are people who go to the prison to advise offenders to do that. Not that they should change their behavior, or maybe they assume that by saying that they accept some religion, that the assumption is that they would change their behavior. Well, we have gone past, we should have gone past, as a society, as a Grenadian people, we should have gone past that assumption already, because we know otherwise. We absolutely know otherwise. Our society has people, right, who know that although the law says 30 years is the maximum for rape, and yes, we know about extenuating circumstances and first offenders and so on. But I have a question for Ruggles, and I don't know if you have the statistics or the information on that, because I don't. But it doesn't seem to me, from the information I have, has anyone ever been sentenced with the maximum sentence for rape in Grenada? I know there is no minimum, but in all of the excuses and reasons why a judge might not give the maximum, has there ever been a time from 2012 to now where a judge came to the conclusion that this person before me should be given the maximum or something close to the maximum for this particular offense or this series of offenses? Yeah?
Okay.
Ms. McQueen, just finish your train of thought. Let Ruggles answer that quickly, and I'll get back to you to finish, Ms. McQueen. Ruggles, please. Maximum sentence.
Answer now, or?
Yes. No, answer now. Yes, please.
Yes,
quickly.
Yes. I just Mrs. McQueen is a lady that I do admire. She has been in the trenches for a long time. And you know, one of the things, and I'm listening to you very, very carefully, and I do believe that some of these comments are really unfair to some of the very hard workers in our system. Let me tell you.
Sorry.
Can
I come in? No, please. Can I come in? I listened to your commendation of me, right?
Yeah.
And honestly, you know, as you said, I've been in this for a long time. I've seen a lot. I've heard a lot, right? And I did not make those statements lightly. And I never suggested that everyone in the system is at fault. But I am saying to you and to the people that our Grenadian people as a whole need to step up and look at our institutions, look at our systems, and the different props and support mechanisms that are there for it. Because when I look at the remarks that are being made on social media and otherwise, I am hearing things that suggest that we do not take everything into account. And I am saying to all of us, let us take the entire scope of the system into account,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And let us be honest about it. And I'm also asking you, as an officer of the court, to be honest about it. The court is not perfect. You've spoken about, for example, the
Well, you can have my agreement on that.
declaration. And I am saying to you, I'm saying to us, these are some of the imperfections.
Right.
Let us deal with it. You've spoken about the need to address the root cause of rape and so on. The root cause of rape is patriarchy, gender inequality. We have been addressing it. As a matter of fact, 20 years ago, when a woman would have been killed by a partner or a rapist, our society perhaps would have said, what is she wearing? What is she doing outside that hour of the night? Our society was in a place where it did not even recognize that women had the right to be outside 20 years ago. The situation now is that a woman is killed and the society is saying, we know she had a right to be there. We know she had a right to her life. What is the system doing about it? That's where we are at. We have moved as it relates to the prevention and the recognition of the seriousness of the offense. Our society has in fact moved. My argument is that we have not yet moved enough to the point of examining our system. And I am even positing that there are people who are protecting the system and protecting offenders. And our society needs to look at that as part of the problem. That's my argument right now. It doesn't have to be everybody. Even if it's one person protecting a failing system or a system that's failing us, even if it's one person that's protecting the offenders and seeing to it that the critical policies are not implemented. If there are people who are seeing to it that the policy on the rights of victims that the government has approved is not being implemented, let us find what it is. Because these are points where corrections need to be made. Systems need to be addressed. Institutions need to be addressed. That is where we are at the moment.
So, Ruggles, yes, on the question of the maximum sentencing issue there, in your experience in cases that you've been involved with, I suspect you can only speak of your experience or maybe established case law.
No, I can speak generally.
Generally, yes,
you don't
maximum sentencing.
The maximum is a maximum. The maximum is that is what it is. You can't give more than. But you hardly have situations where people get the maximum unless it's the most compelling situations, right?
Hardly or ever.
And Ruggles, why is that?
No, the question is it hardly or is it ever?
Listen. Sorry?
Is it hardly or ever?
Or is it ever?
Well, I've not known of any situation where, and I'm not saying it's not, but I'm saying I can say it is, and I'm not speaking about Grenada or the OECS, but that's generally the case. That's why you have things like plea bargaining and all of these issues, right? And what I'm saying, you see, I'm with you, Ms. McQueen. It's a work in progress, right? And we are moving slowly, but we are moving in a positive direction. There are many things that have been done over the years that we can identify as positive. However, we can't, and I say this with respect. In every individual, there's good and there's bad. People get charged with offenses. When it comes to the situation of mitigation, mitigation is about saying what is good about the person. And I don't think it is fair also to make, I understand you see, we have to be responsible and objective. And I
Yes, we have
understand,
to.
I,
And
I,
holistic.
I, I understand where you're coming from. But we have social workers, we have probation officers and so, that they go out, they work under serious strictures
Yes,
in
they
terms
do.
of resources and so.
Oh, yes,
I
they do.
know they produce good reports. They don't produce this report out of their head. They go out
Right.
and speak to people,
And what do the
right?
people tell them?
And let me just make the point, right? I heard you out. The point is, when you're dealing with mitigation, you deal with the positive aspects of a person,
Of course.
not the bad. It has nothing to do with the offense you commit. Because if you go on a theory, right, and I say this because I can speak from experience, right? Sometimes the people who people who really go out and defend their rights and so and want all of their rights, police officers, right? People cry down police officers, they do this and that. Police officers, they know what rights are, and anytime you have any police officer in a situation, they want to ensure that all the rights are brought into play, just like everybody else. It is a system. It is a system, and a system throughout the world. It's not a system that any of us created. And that's why when I'm dealing with programs like this, I try not. It's easy to play on emotions. It's easy to play on emotions. I'm not playing, I'm just saying what the law is. And what the law, I'm the first to say that we need a lot of changes in the law. But I don't think, and if you are aware of people going and tell prisoners to do this, and I don't think, that's not my experience. Apart from myself, about other lawyers or prison officers saying, go and do this and go and do that because you want to beat the system. I don't think that it should be reduced to that. And not everybody, people, right? There are good people, there are bad people. Good people get charged with criminal offenses. And the reality is, at the end of the day, that there is a system, a system with rules, and you employ that system, and you have judicial officers, as I always say, they play a difficult role because they play the role based on what the law is, not what people say, right? Whether it's on social media, in the rum shops, and wherever. It's not based on that. And you need people with the strength. And that's why a judicial officer has to have strength. Because at times you take a decision, he or she will take a decision that he has to take licks for, or she has to take licks for. But it is their duty because they are applying the law. And you know what? At the end of the day, they get more respect. They gain more respect through that because it's easy to criticize them. It is easy for us to see what is not done and what should be done. And at the end of the day, criticize the court, criticize the police, criticize everybody we can criticize. But, when we look at people on committees, people who working the hardest, as I said, people that don't do nothing don't get criticized enough because they have nothing to be criticized over. Those who try their best, give voluntary service, they get criticized, you know what? Because people feel they should do more. I'm saying we all have collectively a responsibility to make the society a better place. To work on those areas.
Yes.
I always say I'm very strong on prison reform. And we have seen examples of where people go into prisons. People they never had the opportunity to do anything like study and so on. They were on their own thing. They go in there and they study, they make something out of themselves, and they come out. They are not a danger to society when they come out. And that's what we want. For example, the whole issue of mental issues. That's a big issue
That's a
always
major
spoken
that's
about
a
by the
major red
judges,
flag in the society.
everybody.
I agree.
And
yes.
we need to address these issues in a real way. In a real way.
Right, and there are absolute nuances here, Mr. Ferguson. You are correct. You're absolutely correct. But we really have to get to Ms. McQueen.
Let me commend, as long as I haven't seen Ms. Henry, let me commend her for staying the course, staying the course over the years, and for you, Kellon, to raise these issues. I'm always very strong on public education, and
yes,
because it's public empowerment that you need to understand things and be able to participate in an informed way and press for changes where we really need changes in a real way that can sustain us.
Yes, yes. We quickly have to get to the last part of the program because, ladies and gentlemen, it's past your lunch, I suppose, at this time, and I apologize for keeping you here so long. But the gravity of this, I think, requires this type of ventilation that we're having. But Ms. McQueen, I'm going to go ahead and share the screen here around the sex offenders registry. Now, this was published in the Now Grenada publication. This was in 2021. I believe it was late 2021, and it says sex offenders registry closer to reality. We are now in 2026, but let us talk about what this publication says here, written by Linda Straker. The act facilitates obtaining of possessory title to land by people claiming through. Wait, no. Is that?
No,
what?
Yeah, it's on different things. It seems, Kellon.
Right. Okay. Yes. So right.
It started off with possessory title.
Yes, correct.
So it might be
right.
maybe a little lower down.
Let me get to yes. So that it's not there. But Ms. McQueen, of course, that came up. That's a mismatched story here. I apologize for that. But Ms. McQueen, let us talk about the sex offenders registry as outlined. Again, that was published back in 2021. Let's talk about why that has not been implemented. Let us talk about the legislation that was proposed and where you left it, where your organization left it, and the partners you've been working with in civil society left it. You handed it off, I suppose, to the drafting chambers, to the Attorney General's chambers. What happened after?
Well, it was actually the other way around. It wasn't handed to government. Government had, in fact, drafted it, as far as I am aware, and brought several stakeholders into consultation on it. It was a result of the outcry from the same incident in relation to Ariel Bola. Well, it was one of the things that came out of it. And highlighted at that time. I think the thought around offenders registry was there before, but the action on it was spurred on by that incident. The draft, in the drafting, I was made to understand that they considered certain conditions that were constitutionally required. For example, can an individual be placed on a public register after their sentence is complete, given that one of the tenets of the justice system is that once you have served your time, then that's the end of your sentence or end of your punishment. However, it is noted that despite that, there are criminal records, and that criminal record can be used in the determination of jobs, visas, and other things. So it is, even though that was a tenet, that the sentence comes to an end at the end, your punishment comes to an end at the end of your sentence. It was not, it was recognized that there were reasons and clearly instances where there were provisions around it, like if you want to get a job. And so it was decided to go forward with the sex offenders registry, but then there were considerations around whether or not it should be a public register or a register held by the Commissioner of Police, of course, meaning the office of the Royal Grenada Police Force, and only released on specific inquiries, similar to how a criminal record would be kept. And there was a lot of discussion around that. There were, I think, the general sentiment from the society representatives, the NGOs and so on, was that it would be best for it to be public, but there could be categories for which the categories of offenders then, for which it is made public, right? So the draft was discussed with quite a lot of detail, in fact, and it provides for the establishment of the registry, that it would be kept by the Commissioner of Police. It provides for the process by which the registry or any individual's information on the registry can be released. It provides for the offender to report to police stations as required in every individual circumstance. And it also provides for expunging the record under specific circumstances. So all of these were drafted and are actually sitting in a draft somewhere. Quite recently, the government had indicated that it was willing to bring this back on the table. As a matter of fact, the government had indicated that it would bring a whole range of legislation on the table in relation to gender-based violence and protection of children. The marriage, changing the age of marriage.
The last couple of months, the number of
that was passed.
Go ahead, Ms. McQueen, yes.
Okay. The issue of the children, young adolescents being able to access medical services and advisory services, and so was another. There were recommendations that the government also considered around the child maintenance, around several things in relation to that. Sentencing guidelines for further review, but of course in coordination with the Eastern Caribbean Supreme Court, also to consider family court and sexual offenders court, offenses court. And the government had indicated that and publicized that information through several discussions led by, in which the Attorney General spoke. So there was a whole range of things. I'm not sure what the current status is of any of those, if it would go forward with them. I think if our society wants the government to go forward with legislation like this, like the sexual offenses register, like all that I spoke about, having a sexual offenses court, having, a whole range of issues they're addressed in legislation, I think our society can let our representatives know that we are willing to go forward with it, and that we are willing to participate in supporting the process that would get us to a point where we need to be. When I say our society, again, it is about our people, our men and our women. You see, cabinet is not a thing, it is made up of people. Every system, the court is not a thing, it is a collection of people. Every system, every process, every institution is made up of people. And our society too is made up of people, you and me, men and women. What do we want? What do we want our authorities to do? What would we accept? What would we encourage them and support them to do? Will we cry now that someone has lost her life or her life has been taken, to be more precise? Would we cry no? And then if the government chooses to do something about it, we then shoot them in the back or in the foot or someplace? Because for some reason we have on a party color at that particular moment. Our society needs to take responsibility for where we're at and where we want to be in terms of how our institutions, our systems function.
Yes.
That includes whether or not we want to see the sexual offenses register passed, whether we want, there is another one, the protection of vulnerable witnesses. That one was actually passed, but never brought into fruition. It was passed somewhere since around 2014 or thereabout, never brought into force. We're still suffering from situations where victims are treated badly in the court. And when I say badly, it's, as Ruggles said, it is within the system, but we had legislation that was supposed to protect vulnerable witnesses. Again, some of our people said we don't want to see it enforced. And up to this moment, it's not enforced. Are enough of our people now willing to tell our government now, go ahead and enforce these things? And when, as government, if they do pass new legislation, amended legislation, enforcement orders, and so on, will we expect our institutions, law enforcement, health, court, church, school, whatever institutions, will we hold those institutions to account and expect those institutions to implement properly what would be to the benefit of our people, including, and especially in this case, the women and girls?
Ms. McQueen, absolutely, thank you. We'll take our final break, folks, and come back for closing comments. Please stand by.
Reported cases of sexual offences has been steadily increasing. During the months January 2020 to July 2021, 38 sexual offences were completed by the court, with 23 convictions and 8 acquittals. In April of this year, 204 reports and cases were brought before the criminal assizes, of which 88 were sexual offence cases. According to Attorney General Dia Forrester, we do have a sex crime issue in Grenada that must be addressed.
We do have a sex crimes issue in Grenada, and we must tackle that issue in a direct manner. So the advent of the National Sex Offenders Registry Bill is one of the measures being used to assist with that process of tackling sex crimes in our country. The bill is aimed at deterring, punishing, and shaming rapists, pedophilias, and those others with a propensity to commit sexual crimes. The bill is also aimed at ensuring members of the public are aware of who are offenders living amongst us, so that members of the public are better able to protect themselves.
The bill forms part of the legislative agenda of the Ministry of Legal Affairs and the Attorney General Chambers for 2021. This bill seeks to deter potential sex offenders from committing registerable offences and to keep the public informed of the presence of sex offenders in their communities.
A comprehensive register that is accessible only by the Commissioner of Police, and a second register that members of the public may inspect. The intended registers would be in the control and custody of the Commissioner of Police, providing the parameters for the police force to effectively monitor registered sex offenders and facilitate the Commissioner assessing the likelihood of that individual endangering their community and people with whom they interact with frequently.
Minister for Social Development and Housing, Delma Thomas, addressed the issue.
We have a responsibility. The responsibility is not only with the Ministry of Social Development, the SVU, and the police force. When you commit sexual offense on children, you are killing them. You are really killing them. You're destroying them for life. They are broken after. And you can't repair those brokenness. And therefore, we have to look at this crime, as a scourge, as an evil spirit.
Legal Affairs Minister Kendra Maturin Stewart explained that under the bill, registered offenders will be required to report to the police station once every 6 months. Failure to adhere can result to a fine of $10,000 and or 2 years imprisonment. Failure to comply with reporting to the police station every 6 months is a summary offense, punishable by $5,000 or 12 months behind bars. Christina John, GBN News.
Don't go there.
You are a technocrat. I mean, you can speak to whether or not it was appropriate or inappropriate for that to occur. Would you have done that as a permanent secretary?
Politicians get the information from wherever source that they can.
That's going to be the extent of your answer.
Yeah.
Don't go there.
There's a lot of noise around the data protection bill that, in my respectful view, is not warranted.
I was one of those making noise, and it's simply because I was concerned about that specific section 33.
Don't go there.
Are you going to be offering yourself up as political leader of the party?
I see you've called me here for much more than diplomatic passports. I don't mind that.
Don't go there.
What is the relationship like between you and your leader, Dr. Mitchell, your boss, Dr. Mitchell?
I'm not sure how to explain how to answer this question at this time. I prefer not to answer.
Don't go there.
They said that you approached the bank for the loan before the election and that it only materialized after the election. There are also conflicting reports around the quantity of monies that were received. What is the reality here?
People try to extort the truth and to make all kinds of things about it. I just stay quiet. So if you notice, I was really and truly quiet about the whole matter.
Well, except with not with the New Today newspaper. The New Today newspaper reported on this, so I'm not sure you were quiet on this. Go ahead, Honorable. Go ahead.
Well, I'm just trying to answer your question, right?
Don't go there.
I think we just spoke at length about the regularization framework. So
yes, we did. Now let us talk. Let us talk, Prime Minister. Let us talk about the workers who are dismissed.
The Bob Report. We go there.
And folks, welcome back to the final segment of this week's edition of the Bob Report. Of course, this was a marathon edition of the program, a very weighty and heavy. We do weighty and heavy issues here, but today was especially weighty and heavy. And of course, before I want to get to closing comments from our guests today, some of the takeaways from this conversation that I think it's critical for us to look at. One has to do with sentencing reform. There ought to be some urgent need for sentencing reform here. The prison sentencing methodology and what that looks like once somebody has been sentenced. Of course, we heard about the particular board that's responsible for making a determination of whether or not a person's prison sentence, while they're serving that prison sentence at Richmond Hill Prison. I would never say His Majesty's Prison. His Majesty does not pay for the upkeep of this prison. I don't know why we're still calling it His Majesty's Prison. I don't think King Charles can find Richmond Hill Prison on a map. But anyways, or Princess Alice Hospital, I don't think she can find it on a map, or she would have known where Carriacou was when she was alive. Or she knew where Carriacou was, not would have. But prison sentence methodology, early release considerations, and who makes that determination in the context of once prison sentencing happens. The sex offenders registry, which we just discussed ad nauseum here. Probation system in respect of supervisory releases, what that looks like. Is there the parole board in the context of the Committee on the Prerogative of Mercy? Judicial reform as well. Mr. Ferguson articulated work that was done. There is a lot of recommendations on paper. But again, are we going to be coming back here next week, the week after next, after today's program, having this conversation again? And this is why I want to bring in Aruna. Aruna, I hear your frustration, I hear your passion, and I think both of us share that passion equally. And this is, by the way, this is a feminist issue. There was somebody in the comments saying, well, why does Miss McQueen have to bring feminism into this? Misogyny is a feminist issue. Sexism is a feminist issue. Our women in Grenada are socialized into subservience. That is a feminist issue, and I'm very passionate about that, and I make no apologies for that. And by the way, men can also be feminists. I'm one of them.
I was listening, attentively, and one of the things that stood out or jumped out at me from especially Mr. Ferguson was that it really shows that we have some serious flaws in our system, and we need to work on it like today. And, when Mrs. McQueen was raised the point about, the sex offenders registry, and one of the reasons that it is still, we have not seen it as yet, protecting, it almost feels as though perpetrators are protected instead of the victims. As far as I'm concerned, if you do such a crime as raping a child, raping a woman, you've lost any right now to protection. We should know, we the public ought to know who you are. Getting a job, whatever you need to do, that's on you. And it doesn't seem as though we have enough things to act as deterrent, because if you know that, hey, I do this crime, at the end of it, my face will be plastered all over. These are the things I have to do when I get back into society. If I get back into society, then I might think twice about doing it. And let me just say this plainly. Violence against women is not just a crime problem. It is a cultural problem in Grenada. Because when perpetrators believe that the worst that will happen is a slap on the wrist, when cases drag on for years, when survivors are re-traumatized in court, when bail is granted easily, when sentencing is light, when repeat offenders walk freely in communities, that sends a message. And the message is this: women's pain is negotiable, women's safety is optional, and women's lives are expendable, and that is unacceptable. We cannot just keep pretending that locking someone up for a few years, or sometimes not at all, is justice for rape, sexual assault, or brutal violence. These are crimes that permanently affect lives. It alters lives. Women who have been victims say this all the time. These are crimes that steal your dignity. It steals your peace. You're always looking over your shoulder. You never feel safe. We need stiffer penalties, not as revenge, but as protection. Not as punishment alone, but as a deterrent. We need laws that reflect the severity of these crimes. And I just don't believe that where we are right now, they do. We need sentencing that sends a clear message. If you violate a woman, if you terrorize her, if you take her life, you will face serious, uncompromising consequences. And legislation alone is not enough. We, the people, we have to stop being silent observers. We have to stop protecting abusers because they are family, or is a good boy, or a churchman, or well-known, or even a good home. We have to stop blaming women for men's violence, and we have to stop telling women to endure, to pray, to keep quiet, to think about reputation, because every time we do that, we become part of the problem. And that's my piece.
Yeah, and we also have to say to our men, and mind you, men are also sexually abused as well, and they experience that sexual violence. FYI, but we also have to stop saying to victims, "Well, what did you do to deserve this? Were you dressed in a particular way? Right? What did you say something wrong to the man that deserved that beating that you got?"
And we need to start teaching our boys early about consent, boundaries,
absolutely, and you know, there is a follow-up program that we'll be doing, and that is a pervasive issue that I discovered having had conversations with two very brilliant young intellectuals in Grenada. I believe Ruggles introduced me to one of them at the Rainbow City Festival, or the Emancipation Festival in Grenada last year. But that young man told me there is something pervasive among the 20-somethings in Grenada right now, with the preponderance of the use of social media sites like TikTok and the misogyny that exists on those sites. So young men have been influenced by the indigenous misogyny that exists in the society, and are now being influenced by the toxic misogyny that exists in those spaces like TikTok. And you have young men who are getting these messages from their social media apps in the 20-somethings who are trying to implement that type of behavior against women. You have 20-somethings, teenagers fantasizing about raping women in Grenada.
Let me just say this quickly again. At the end of the day, change does not happen because people in power suddenly grow a conscience or suddenly decide it's time to change. Change happens when citizens, when we, the people, when we demand it, when we lobby, when we write, when we call, when we show up, and when we refuse to let these stories die quietly. So we cannot wait until it's our sister. We cannot wait until it's your daughter, your friend, your colleague, because by then it is already too late. One is already too much. It's already too late. So when we speak, we don't just want this to be a today, and we are so passionate 2 days, and by next week,
and then next week we gone to the other topic.
jump into content. Then this goes by, and the family alone is left, and the community is left to deal with this. This is not a community issue. This is a Grenada issue.
This is a national issue.
Stands very high on the list. 2 things we're good for: 1, alcohol consumption; 2, sexual offenses. And for an island, 100,000 people, we fit into a state in the US. We stand very high. We practically, I think last time I checked, we were in the top 10 for alcohol consumption and sexual offenses. That is not good. That is not good.
Yeah, absolutely. Aruna, thank you so much for taking the time. And also I had to put this together on short notice because, I thank you all panelists for your flexibility. Mr. Ferguson, thank you for always being flexible, sir. Ms. McQueen as well. This was put together, as you know, I contacted you all yesterday, and it is not our style at the Bub Report to contact people at the last minute because I respect people's time. We spend a lot of time doing research for our programs, curating the questions, thinking about how we are going to frame these topics. And given the incidents that unfolded February 6th, we thought that this had to happen. So thank you all for agreeing on such short notice, for being flexible. So Mr. Ferguson, sir, I will go over to you, sir, for closing comments. Of course, you've heard the passion here, you've heard the emotion, but Mr. Ferguson, what you brought and what you continue to bring to the space is the context of the system, the legal system that we currently function under, as well as the challenges that exist in those systems. Over to you, sir, for closing comments.
Yes, well, thank you, Kellon. Thank you for inviting me, and let me again commend you for putting together such a program like this. It's by definition it had to be at short notice because these unfortunate developments took place on Friday. And let me take the opportunity to express sympathies to the family of that young lady who was so tragically lost her life. Like in everything, we need advocates, and the important thing is the discussion. We don't have to agree on everything, but it's important to discuss it among ourselves, among different sectors of our society. And really and truly, ultimately, I was listening to the various comments, and again, it just reinforces what I always believe in, the need for ongoing and serious public education, the need for ongoing legal reform, because we need to look at our laws, not just criminal laws, but generally our laws. We need to look at our constitution, and it is only when these things face us, and we have to confront it in the way that we feel best to respond to it. And that is okay, but let these things be lessons for us in moving forward. Because what is really needed is sustained work. It's really sustained work. And Aruna made the point at the end of her presentation. She made the point about alcohol consumption. Very high in Grenada. For example, what is the link? Is there any link between alcohol consumption and sexual offenses? And there is the belief that there is such a link in many instances, particularly where you have people drinking and losing control, you have a lot of these kinds of offenses committed. So it has to be approached holistically. There are various things that we need to do. As I would repeat the point that we need to look at causes and connections and address these issues, because underlying all of them, the bottom line really is respect for women. Respect for women. And how do we engender that kind of respect, especially in the context of all that hit us on social media, all that our kids are exposed to, all that young people who are very impressionable are exposed to, all people who like to copycat are exposed to. So the challenge becomes even greater in that kind of context. But we got to do what we got to do. It's a work in progress. It's not a perfect society, but we work towards a perfect society as we can achieve. So thank you
Absolutely.
very much.
Yes,
I felt the
absolutely,
passion.
Ruggles. Yes,
And unless I'm
yes.
colorblind, I think that top that Aruna is wearing is more brown than orange, but that's another debate. It is orange. Okay. I thought you were colorblind, but I think probably it's me. Yeah.
Maybe
It's not orange, but
I am the
orangey.
only one. I am the only one here who does not have a glasses. Just putting that out there. I'm not discriminating. Okay, just saying.
That's
Just
all right.
like there. Yes. Okay. Okay. Mrs. McQueen, Elaine Henry McQueen.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kellon, for pulling this panel together today. And no problem about the short notice in my case because of the gravity of the situation, the urgency of it. I just want to quickly indicate that alcohol is not a cause of violence against women. There is a correlation, but it's not a cause. For example, if a woman is drunk, she does not abuse a man. She does not sexually attack men, or at least commit the crimes of sexual assault, right? She is violated. She is more at risk of becoming a victim if she is drunk. So if a man is drunk, perhaps he should try to use the same thing. Wait to be violated. Not that we want men to be violated, because they shouldn't be. But nobody should use alcohol as an excuse for committing a crime. What comes out is what's already inside of them somewhere. Secondly, I agree with Ruggles that we need the holistic approach. And that holistic approach must include the rights and safety and well-being of victims and their families and all witnesses involved. That holistic approach must take into account the protection of the society. So I agree with you about the holistic approach and want us to urge us to go that route of securing the well-being of victims, the rights of victims, and the well-being and protection of the society. I also want to agree that the system that we're operating with is crafted based on what's happening all over the world. And because of that, we can therefore draw similarities with what went on with the Me Too movement, which was a global movement but concentrated in North America. We can think about what's happening now with the Epstein issues, the Epstein files and all of that, and the cover-ups and or apparent issues related to it. I'm not versed in what is happening, but it's certainly worth noting that if we're relying on a global system where the issues of what is happening there with the Epstein-related charges and convictions and so on is a part, we need to honestly, it gives us even more reason to examine our system and see if that is the system we want to model. Is our society, though, ready to tell our government that it is time to enact the remaining laws? Is our society ready to ensure that or to tell the government and the institutions responsible that it is time to enforce the laws that are in place, to enforce the policies in place, the action plans that have been prepared. Where is our society on that? And therefore, I agree with Aruna that the people, as a people, we have to demand the change that we want. But we must go a little further. Are we willing as a people to stand with those who are willing to change the things that we want to see changed, who are willing to make the changes? Or do we find ways of bringing down the people who are actually looking for the change that the majority of us in society so demand, so desire, so deserve? Where is our society? And that's where I really want to ask us as a people, each of us, male and female, look at ourselves. Are we willing to lend support towards changing the things in the systems that are failing us now? And are we willing to stand with those who have indicated that they are willing to make the changes? And are we willing to support the process in a speedy or manner? And unlike the assumption that it is hot-headed, no, these things have been in train for decades. These recommendations have been policies and drafts and for decades. Bringing them to fruition now will not be a hot-headed response. It will be a climax of things in terms of getting them enacted, getting them approved and passed and implemented, will be a continuation of a process that started long before my time. And I've been involved in this more than 30 years ago. I inherited a body of work around women's rights and thought we need to do more. And now here I am still talking about things that I've been in conversations about 25 years ago, right? So what does our society really want? I want to, at this point, offer condolences to the family and friends and all relatives and the entire Grenadian society of Alejandra Let Hippolyte. Deepest condolences to all of us, but especially to the family and immediate friends. It is a very trying time, and I wish for you peace. I wish for you the opportunity to have justice served. I also wish that that tragic event would cause us as a society to really take charge of this issue and address it once and for all, so that even as you grow out of the pain that you're feeling now, you would perhaps be able to reflect and say at least something good came out of it because the society has improved. I also want to reflect with all of the family members and friends of people who have already been killed before or raped. And even if you're alive now and you had been raped or assaulted, and when issues like these happen, when incidents like these happen, it re-traumatizes these victims and their families and their loved ones. You suffer again because of all the memories. You suffer again because we call the names of the people who you lost. I just want to reflect with you and hope that you too will find peace and that our society will get to a place where we can support you in your loss and do something about it so that you will feel a sense of justice, but not justice only for the crime itself, but justice to the extent that our society is ready to do something real about this problem. So even as we've gone through talking about what the problems are and what are possible solutions, none of that matters if we do not do anything. So for us as a Grenadian people, I am asking us to do something, to demand the change, to support the change, and support the change makers. Support the change makers, because if the change makers are not supported, they perhaps will not feel that there is any need to make that change. As Aruna said at the beginning, when you organize an event like the march and nobody shows up, you feel deflated. How do we support the people who are willing to make the change so that our society will become a more peaceful society? It will become one where all women and men and boys and girls will be able to live in peace, not only because we don't like what some government put out as a safety status for our country, but because we know that in our homes, in our villages, on the way from school, that we are actually safe. So I want to end here and say thank you very much, Dr. Bob, for inviting me on the program, and have a good day, everyone.
Thank you so much, Ms. McQueen, and panelists. Thank you for appearing on the program this week, folks. This was very heavy. I can't just imagine what this family is having to confront at this time. This is extremely heavy. This is extremely heavy, and I teared up, thinking about this all day yesterday, and it's just really, really tragic and unfortunate. But that aside, I saw some earlier comments about the so-called travel advisory from the United States, and somebody saying, well, yeah, see, well, the guy who appeared on the Epstein files 33,000 times was right about Grenada's issues of crime. Only to say that this issue goes beyond this travel advisory issued by the United States. This is a perennial issue. So this is not a new issue. So let's not use that as the basis for creating political fodder now, under any circumstances. And quite frankly, a country right now that has multiple of its leaders on the Epstein files, should be the last people having conversations about crime and criminality anywhere in the world. That's what I would say on this. But of course, fundamentally, there needs to be, we need to clean house on so many things. A lot of the recommendations here, a lot of work. Mr. Ferguson and Ms. McQueen and others have done a lot of work here to look at sentencing reform, to look at prison sentence methodology, to look at early release, to look at sex offenders registry. There is so much that needs to be looked at. Even the current legislation around rape needs to be looked at. So much work that needs to be done. But it needs to go beyond talk. It needs to go beyond talk, right? And it needs to go beyond, we have outrage now, and then we go back to our default settings a week later until another piece of drama shows up, and then we come back here having the same conversation again. And quite frankly, sometimes, and people know this at my workplace, I talk a lot, but when it comes to doing things, we know what needs to be done. Well, what needs to be done? Are we going to have a protest march and then what? No, what are we doing systematically to change the legislation that currently exists, to look at what needs to be reformed, to look at systems that protects our women and girls in a real and substantial way, to look at reporting mechanisms by police. And that culture, when you report to police that something is happening in the community, they say, oh, well, we don't have transport, we can't go, or this person is a nuisance, they come in under. There is so much that needs to be done, that needs to go beyond talk. And I'm tired of people coming here, giving recommendations, about what needs to be done, and then we go back, Have we implemented what we say we were going to implement? That is the fundamental issue at heart here. What systems are in place to operationalize those recommendations? So somebody is in our communities, we know that person has a particular rap sheet. Are the communities reliably informed? Not 24, 48, 72 hours later. Are the communities reliably informed in real time that we have these types of individuals in our communities? And so we need to be on the lookout, that we need to be vigilant. We use WhatsApp to spread all kind of mawet. All kind of confusion. Who taking who, man, who taking who, this, what? Can we use the technologies that we have in such a way as to protect our women and girls and our boys too, by the way? This has gone beyond talk at this point. Folks, again, Alejandra Lett should not be a statistic today. She should not be a victim today. Not a young lady with so much promise and so much other people who were traumatized by this person before. They are being re-traumatized today. I'm very passionate about this, folks, because I know people personally who have been victims of this type of violence. So excuse me if you think I'm ranting or whatever the case might be. That is something that has also affected me personally. So this is where we end today. We will continue to have those conversations. We will continue to do our part with respect to educating and empowering, and if we can reach one person, and that's something I challenge us to do, reach one person in our communities who may harbor some very objectionable views about their sisters. And let us think about how we can engender change of these very deeply entrenched attitudes that exist in our society. And men need to do this work. Men need to do this work. Because a lot of the perpetrators, most of the time, tend to be male. So, folks, this is where we would wrap up today. And again, viewers and listeners, I do apologize that we were not able to get to a lot of your questions because I really wanted to do a deep dive with our subject matter experts today with respect to the current infrastructure that exists, the deficiencies in the in infrastructure, the legal and social service infrastructure, and what needs to be done under the hood, the hard work that needs to be done to implement a lot of what needs to be done. So I do apologize that we were not able to get to all of your questions, but certainly we want to thank you for your participation on the program today. Please share this program so that folks can be educated on what was covered here today. And again, to Alejandra's family, to Ariel Bola's family, Robbie and Jeremiah's family, all of the other victims, so much names. And to all of the surviving victims as well, let us extend love and light to all of them. We're signing off until next week. This is the Bub Report. Take care. Have a good Sunday to the extent that will be possible.
We seek the truth.
Would you be handing your resignation to the Minister of Culture tomorrow, sir?
No, I will not.
The leader of the opposition, you have accused your government, sir, of using the Grenada Development Bank to facilitate the financing of personal loans for certain government ministers.
The other side is in no position to talk about those issues, and I will leave it there.
We discover new perspectives.
You know his leadership style, and so many are saying, why are you coming now to talk about those issues?
Now is the time to speak. You have the right to decide who will take over.
And you met with Dr. Mitchell, and perhaps you might want to confirm what that meeting was about in your response. But
Dr. Mitchell, like myself, are Grenadians.
We ask the right questions.
Why was there no report on the work done of the commission? And how is this new committee different from the commission that was initially established back in 2022? So who are these elements that are using you?
I'm disappointed in my political leader.
And why is that animating those political conversations now?
This is a very interesting question.
The Bub Report with Dr. Kellon Bub. Thought-provoking, truthful, unbiased, and truly original reporting.
Hi everyone. The Bub Report is committed to being fearless, balanced, and independent, bringing you the stories that matter most without compromise. Now do us a favor. Remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Hit the bell so you never miss an update. You can also watch us on GBN TV every Wednesday at 5 p.m. Catch us on WPG10 television every Sunday at 8 p.m. Your support helps us to keep journalism free from bias and influence. And together, we can make sure every voice is heard and every fact is verified. Thanks for watching.